Chapter 3281. What do you mean? Feng Jiu raised his eyebrows and looked at him. It's the same continent, and it's the same upper world. However, the void is different. He used his powerful spiritual energy to open up a new world. His spiritual energy covered the entire world he was in. It said that the world he opened up was named the Sky Connecting Realm. It's also said that he has always been expanding his power and fighting for territory. Among them, the most intense one should be the one between him and the Xuanwu monarch. Feng Jiu flipped through the information on the table while listening. When he heard Monarch Xuanwu, he was about to ask, but Xianyuan Mose had already asked. Is Monarch Xuanwu the owner of the ancient mythical beast, Shaoli? Xianyuan Mose looked at him and asked. CK was surprised. He looked at Xianyuan Mose and asked, Master, do you know Monarch Xiao? Xianyuan Mose shook his head and said, No, I only know that there is such a person. In fact, his master had told him that the 4 ancient mythical beasts were the azure dragon of the east, the white tiger of the west, the vermilion bird of the south, and the black tortoise of the north. He owned the azure dragon of the 4 ancient mythical beasts. He had asked his master who owned the other 3 ancient mythical beasts. He remembered that his master had told him about Monarch Xuanwu, Shaoli. It was said that this person was a legendary figure. Other than the azure dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise of the ancient mythical beasts, there were also the phoenix, the qilin, and other ancient mythical beasts. Other than the ancient mythical beasts, there were also the ancient mythical beasts. Those who owned the ancient mythical beasts or the ancient mythical beasts were not ordinary people. From the information that CK had collected, he only knew the approximate strength of some of the strong people. He didn't know what kind of ancient mythical beasts or the ancient mythical beasts they owned. Cultivators, such as those in the lower realms or some smaller places, had no idea what the highest level of cultivation was. Only when their strength gradually increased would they be able to comprehend and find out. Just like them, they gradually learned that after the immortal emperor was the divine realm, then the low divine realm, mid-divine realm, high divine realm, divine king, and finally the supreme being. They had been cultivating for so many years, and only after coming to the upper world did they come in contact with people who were stronger than them. Divine king, only a clone. If his real body appeared here, they would be in an even more precarious situation. Feng Jiu didn't know what Xianyuan Mose was thinking. She wondered if Hao Er's father was one of the people in the information. Or was it Monarch Xuanwu, Shaoli? After all, according to the information, Shaoli was the #1 enemy of Monarch Xuanwu. Chapter 3282. Of course we can, but I'm not too sure about the specifics. CK looked at her apologetically. The cultivators here had never thought of leaving the mainland, so they knew very little about how to get to the territories of the other sovereigns. Feng Jiu nodded and continued to flip through the information. When he saw some information, his hand paused and he said to the two of them, You two can leave first. We'll take our time to read this. Yes. CK and Mu Xin replied and left. After they left, Feng Jiu looked at Xianyuan Mose with bright eyes. Look at Xiao Li and the woman in the information. Could they be Hao Er's parents? When he heard this, Xianyuan Mose smiled a little helplessly. Why is your focus different from others? Looking at this information, shouldn't you be worried about the powerful enemy we're about to face? Feng Jiu smiled indifferently. There's no point in worrying. The enemy's strength is obvious. Even if we worry, we won't be able to solve anything. Why don't we? She looked at him with a sly glint in her eyes. If these two people are really Hao Er's parents, then things will be much easier. With their current strength, they couldn't fight against a divine king. However, Shaoli was also a divine king. He might not necessarily back down. Xianyuan Mose shook his head. If they really are Hao Er's parents, but they can't even protect their child, they must be in trouble now. How can we count on them? That's true. Feng Jiu rested his chin on one hand and looked at him. Then tell me, this sovereign is so powerful. What should we do? The higher we go, the harder it is to increase our strength. Also, if we increase our strength too quickly, our foundation will be unstable. I don't think we can reach the divine king level in a short time. Xianyuan Moses' eyes flickered. Since we can't increase our strength in a short time, then the only thing we can do is to endure and avoid. He paused and looked at her with his deep black eyes. Only in this way can we have enough time to improve ourselves and make ourselves stronger. Otherwise, if we put ourselves in the most dazzling place like now, it will only give the enemy a chance to kill us. I believe that no matter who it is, no one will give the enemy room to grow stronger. Hearing this, Fengjiu thought deeply and asked, "You mean we should leave this place and hide our identities to become stronger?" "That's right." He looked at her and said in a low voice, "You should know that this is the best solution for now." Fengjiu was silent for a long time. "That's right. Based on the current situation, this was the best solution." Although they didn't want to admit it, they had to admit that even if they combined all their battle strength, they wouldn't be a match for a divine king. Moreover, in a short time, they probably wouldn't be able to reach the divine king level. However, to immortal cultivators, time passed extremely quickly. As long as they found a place to cultivate for a few years without paying attention to worldly affairs, they could avoid the danger before them and also have time to cultivate and increase their strength. Chapter 3283. On this day, the two of them decided on this matter. Fengjiu had chosen Danwang Valley as the place to cultivate in seclusion. She felt that that place was the best place to cultivate. Moreover, the Dan King treated her extremely well, adding on to the fact that he was very strong. If the two of them were to encounter a bottleneck, he might be able to give them some pointers. Other than Mei Zhe, the rest of the people around them were their confidants. Since they were going to cultivate in seclusion, they naturally could not let Mei Zhe go with them. However, they did not know how long it would take. Although they had decided to cultivate in seclusion, it was impossible for them to not let people develop their forces in the outside world. Therefore, the two of them discussed and decided that it would be better to bring a few people with them. As for the rest, they would let them settle down on this mainland first. After another 2 days, Leng Hua and the others could be said to have recovered from their injuries. Only Elder Mei was still in a coma. Qin Xian had also regained consciousness and could get out of bed and walk around. One evening, Bai Qingsheng, who had gone to the sect to cultivate, suddenly returned. "Master, Yama Lord." After Bai Qingsheng entered the mansion, she found Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mose. With a worried expression, she said, "Master, I heard from the sect that the 4 major immortal sects and the 4 major sects are discussing how to deal with you." Upon hearing this, Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mose looked at each other in surprise. Then they looked at Bai Qingsheng and said, "The 4 major immortal sects and the 4 major sects want to deal with us? Why?" "I heard that Master and Yama Lord are enemies with Sovereign Tontian. Sovereign Tontian is an expert with the strength of a divine king. If he is angered, it is very likely that the people on this mainland will be plunged into misery and suffering. The people from those sects and clans are discussing how to capture you, cripple your cultivation, and chase you out of the upper realm in hopes that the upper realm will be safe as usual." I rushed back after hearing this news. "Master, Yama Lord, we can't stay here any longer. We have to leave quickly." Upon hearing this, Xianyuan Moses' face darkened. An icy aura surged from his body. Fengjiu's eyes flashed. He did not seem surprised, and his expression did not change much. If that's the case, it's understandable. If a god king wanted to vent his anger, the life and death of a sect would be in his hands. They're doing this to protect themselves, as well as to protect the peace of the continent, said Jianshun. Fengjiu spoke slowly and calmly analyzed the situation. To her, whether it was the 4 major mortal sects or the 4 major sects, it did not matter to her. They were worried that their sects, clans, or even this mainland would suffer the wrath of a divine king expert. It was normal for them to nip the threat in the bud. However, she did not expect the 4 major mortal sects and the 4 major sects to be so cowardly. They could not tell right from wrong and would actually attack them for the sake of preserving the peace of this mainland. If those sects and forces were important to them, she would probably be very angry and hurt. However, those sects and forces were strangers to her and had nothing to do with her. She did not care what decisions they made. Master, CK and Mu Xin walked in with ugly expressions. When they saw Bai Qingcheng, who was dressed in white, they glanced at her for a moment before looking away. Their gazes landed on Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu. Chapter 3284. When they received the news, they immediately came to inform them. When they heard the news, they were furious. They didn't expect that because of the enemy that appeared that night, the people of the major sects wanted to attack their masters. They were not worthy of being called righteous sections. They knew the plans of the major sects, but there was nothing they could do. After all, they were only venerables of one of the sections. They didn't even have the right to make decisions for their sects, let alone others. When they heard the news, the only thing they could do was to inform them as soon as possible and ask them to leave quickly. Only then could they survive. Hearing this, Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and asked, "Leave quickly?" Xianyuan Mose's expression was the same as usual, but his aura became colder. He didn't seem surprised by the two's words and just watched quietly. CK and Mu Xi nodded and said, "Master, you don't know. Before we left the mountain, we told our disciples to pay attention to the movements of the sects, so we learned that the major sects want to attack you. If the major sects and sects join forces to besiege you, I'm afraid it will be too late for you to escape. We can only leave before they arrive. Qingqing told us about this just now, but we didn't expect the so-called righteous sects to attack us because of this. It's really surprising." With a faint smile on her lips, she said slowly, "We originally planned to leave for a period of time, but we didn't expect to encounter this." Ha! Suddenly, she didn't want to leave so quickly. She wanted to know which sects and sects wanted to attack them. She couldn't believe that the righteous sects would do such a thing. She wanted to see how they would besiege them when the time came. "Master, I'm afraid that the 4 major sects and 4 major sects will send people this time, and none of them will withdraw. If they withdraw, they will definitely be isolated by the other sections. Therefore, even if some sects are unwilling, they will besiege you in the end." As Muexan spoke, she looked at them and sighed. "Masters, you'd better get ready to leave as soon as possible. Did your sects call you back? Or do you want the 2 of you to get involved?" Fengjiu raised her eyebrows and asked the 2 of them. CK frowned slightly and said, "After we received the news from our disciples, the sects sent us a message asking us to return as well. However, they didn't mention anything about dealing with Master. We presume that they want us to return so that we can avoid interfering in this matter. If that's the case, you can go back," Fengjiu said nonchalantly. Upon hearing this, CK and Mu Xin were stunned. They looked at each other and asked, "Master wants us to go back. What? Don't you want to go back?" Fengjiu smiled and looked at the 2. The 2 of them paused for a moment and said, "We've taken Master as our master. Now that Master is in trouble, as his disciples, how can we stand by and do nothing? At the very least, we can't go back until both of you have safely left this place." Ever since they had taken Master Xianyuan as their master, Master Feng had given them a lot of pills and things like that. She had helped them advance and become stronger. Now that they were in trouble as their master's disciples, how could they just leave? Chapter 3285. Their expressions did not change when they heard Fengjiu's words. They frowned slightly and said, "If that's the case, there's nothing we can do about it. If we abandon Master because of this, we won't be able to continue on the path of cultivation. Master, if you don't want to leave, we'll stay with you. We'll advance and retreat together." Mu Xin added. Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu glanced at them. Fengjiu thought for a moment and said, "You can leave now. There's no rush. It won't be too late to wait for them to arrive." She waved her hand and gestured for them to leave. Seeing this, the 2 of them couldn't say anything more. They could only turn around and leave the small courtyard. After they left, Bai Qingcheng said, "Master, they're really thinking for you. It's too dangerous for you to stay here if those sects want to deal with you. It's better for you to leave as soon as possible." "We have to leave, but we can't just leave like this," Fengjiu said slowly. She glanced at Xianyuan Mose and smiled. "Don't you think so?" Xinyuan Mose did not say anything. He only said in a low voice, "Do whatever you want to do. I'll accompany you." A smile appeared in Feng Jiu's eyes when she heard this. She said to Bai Qingsheng, "Go get Leng Hua and the others." "Yes," Bai Qingsheng replied, then turned around and left the courtyard. At this time, in CK's and Mu Xian's sects, the leaders and elders of the various immortal sects were gathered. They were sitting in a circle discussing matters. Some had serious expressions, some were relaxed, some were worried, and some didn't care. "Do we really have to do this? If we do, I'm afraid," a sect leader said hesitantly. There was a trace of worry in his eyes. "That person is the sovereign of the sky-reaching sect. He has already given orders to the various sections. Naturally, he will send people to keep an eye on everything below. Right now, other than doing as he says, what else can we do? But even if we want to deal with Feng Jiu and the others, we have to have a good reason. Otherwise, we'll be cursed by the people if we make a sudden move." One of the elders was hesitant. He looked serious. Obviously, he did not want to do this, but he had no other choice. When the crowd heard this, they could not help but look at each other. They seemed to be thinking of a good reason to cause trouble. Another old man glanced at everyone's expressions, hesitated for a moment, and said, "Actually, there's something that everyone might not know." "What's the matter?" everyone asked, and their gazes landed on the old man. The ghost Dr. Feng Jiu and Xinyuan Mose are not ordinary people. It said that the ghost Dr. Feng Jiu and Xinyuan Mose are the lords of heaven and earth who were prophesied to be. The elder paused. He looked at them and said, "Moreover," the person who said this was Tian Jizi. Hearing this, the crowd was surprised. Tian Jizi prophesied that they were the lords of heaven and earth. That's right. Chapter 3286. Continue. The others gestured, their gazes landing on the old man who had spoken. The old man glanced at them, then said, "Since they are the rulers of the world, we cannot do anything to them. That's one thing. Secondly, ignoring everything else, just their strength and contracted beasts are not things that ordinary people can deal with. Moreover, even the sovereign of Tongtian was injured because of them. So what about us? There's one more thing, which is the final point. They haven't done anything that's out of line or unacceptable to the world. We simply can't and don't have the qualifications to deal with them. If so many of us surround and attack them, then in the eyes of the world in the future, how will we be any different from the people of the evil path?" The old man's mouth was dry from talking, so he took a sip of tea from the table to moisten his throat. In truth, everyone sitting here today felt very helpless. Some of the sect masters did not come, and most of them were elders. It was not that they had to deal with Feng Jiu and Xinyuan Mose, but the sovereign of Tongtian had suddenly threatened them. If they did that, perhaps their sects would really be destroyed. That eccentric sovereign Tongtian had the strength of a godly king. Who knew when he would do the same thing he did to the Feng Manor and create a large hole in the immortal sect they were in? For a moment, no one knew what they were thinking, and no one spoke. After a long time, someone suddenly said, "I have a way to resolve this situation." Hearing this, everyone looked at him. "What do we do? Let's hear it." That person looked at everyone and said, "This matter requires the cooperation of Feng Jiu and Xinyuan Mose. We can let them leave for a period of time. That way, they can preserve their lives, and we can resolve our current predicament. Let them leave if something unexpected happens, or perhaps pretending that there was an accident to deceive the sovereign of the sky, reaching sovereign. That's not a bad idea, but I wonder if they will cooperate." Everyone looked at each other and said, "Find someone to discuss it with them." With that, everyone looked at the sect leader of the Blue Star Immortal sect and smiled. "Sect leader, we remember that Feng Jiu took in 2 supremacies from your sect as disciples. Since that's the case, why don't you handle this matter? Speaking of which, the relationship between your sect and the 2 of them isn't small." Hearing this, the sect master frowned. CK and Mu Xian aren't on the mountain. They've gone to their master's place in Four Corner City. However, since everyone has suggested it, then let's do it. Let's take a look first. On this side, The people who had been preparing to deal with Fengjiu were discussing. On the Feng Manor's side, Fengjiu and Xinyuan Mo's were also discussing matters, just in case. CK and Mu Xin were worried that the people from the sects would suddenly arrive. Thus, the two of them sat on the roof and stood guard. They did their best to protect the Feng Manor and their master. In the evening, CK and Mu Xin, who were sitting on the roof and standing guard, received news from the sect master. It was nothing more than a matter of faking their deaths to avoid the world. After receiving the news, the two could not help but be pleasantly surprised. It seems that they've changed their minds. I need to inform Master about this. As they spoke, CK jumped down from the roof and arrived where Fengjiu and Xinyuan Mo's were. Chapter 3287. When the two of them heard his words, they looked up at him. "Oh, what is it?" "I just received news that the sect master said." He told them about the news he had received, as well as the matter he wanted them to cooperate with. Xinyuan Mo's eyes flickered when he heard this. He hadn't expected them to change their minds. Although he didn't know why, the news didn't sound too disappointing. Fengjiu looked at CK in surprise. They changed their minds? What a surprise. She had originally wanted to wait here and see what kind of tricks they were up to. She hadn't expected them to change their minds. CK looked at her two masters. She didn't know why, but she felt that her two masters didn't look happy when they heard this news. In any case, everything seemed so unimportant. She really didn't know what they were thinking. Just tell them that there's no need to go through so much trouble. Just let them know that we don't know where we went. Fengjiu stood up as he spoke. The two of you should go back too. There's no need to say anything else. If they ask, just say that you don't know where we went or where we went. CK was slightly stunned when she heard this. She didn't seem to be joking. She couldn't help but ask in a daze, "Master, do you mean to say that you want to leave? How long will it take for you to return?" "We can't say for sure," Fengjiu said, then smiled. "But it'll take at least a few years. Don't worry. If we return, we'll definitely let you know." When she heard this, CK nodded. "All right. Since the two masters have already made up their minds, we'll rush back to the sect tomorrow morning." He said tomorrow morning, which meant that he wanted them to leave first during this period of time. Otherwise, when they returned to the sect would send people to check on them after they received the news. "You forgot about Elder Mei," Xinyuan Mo's reminded Fengjiu as he drank tea. At the mention of Elder Mei, Fengjiu slapped his head. "All right, there's also Elder Mei. I'll have to ask you guys to take care of him for a while. His injuries haven't healed yet, so please find a place for him to recuperate." "Elder Mei?" CK thought for a while and finally remembered the bald old man. She said, "That's easy. Just lock him up in the Shao family. I'll tell the Shao family to take good care of him until Master returns." Fengjiu nodded and waved his hand. "All right, go and arrange it." "Yes," CK replied. She bowed and left. No one knew that the people in the Feng Manor quietly left that night. Du Fan and the others left first, and no one knew where they went. In the second half of the night, Xinyuan Mo's and Fengjiu took out air. The Lung Hua siblings, Hui Lang, and Ning Yi with them and disappeared in the night. Bai Qingcheng still followed Fengjiu's orders and returned to the sect. Qin Xin left with Du Fan and the others. Only Lung Hua and the others followed Fengjiu and Xinyuan Mo's. Because they left in a hurry, they didn't wait for Elder Mei to wake up and ask him about Hao Er's biological parents. However, after much deliberation, they finally concluded that Hao Er was the son of the monarch of Black Tortoise, Shaoli. Chapter 3288. In a remote village, Fengjiu was studying the spirit array diagram. In the past half a month, they had been sightseeing, and it had been a peaceful journey. When they arrived at this small village, they saw that it was relatively quiet, so they stayed here for a few days to familiarize themselves with the spirit array diagram. After that, they would use the spirit array diagram to bring them to Pill King Valley. When it came to cultivation and seclusion, there was no place more suitable than Danwang Valley. "Have a cup of tea." Xinyuan Mo's brought a cup of tea to her side and asked, "How's your study of the array diagram?" As he spoke, he sat down beside her. Feng looked up at him and smiled. It should be almost done. I want to try it in the evening. How about it? Okay, Xianyuan Mose replied. After sitting for a while, he stood up. You read for a while more. If you're tired, go out for a walk. I'll go see how. Okay. Feng nodded. After watching him go out, she continued to study the book in her hand. Outside, Hao played happily in the village. Leng Hua and Leng Shuang accompanied him. Hui Lang and Ying Yi sat on the roof and sat on a tree. There were birds chirping around, leaves swaying, and a cool breeze blowing on their faces. It was very comfortable. Xianyuan Mose stood in front of the house with his hands behind his back. He glanced at them, then looked at the sky. No one knew what he was thinking, but his expression was thoughtful. Hui Lang and Ying Yi saw that they had nothing to do, so they went into the small forest. They hunted 2 wild boars in the forest and came back to distribute the meat to the people in the small village. In the evening, Feng, who smelled the aroma of food, finally closed the book in her hand and looked up. She put the array diagram book back into the space, stood up, stretched, and walked out. Mother, little Hao, ran over happily with his short legs and hugged her thigh. At this time, his little face was overflowing with a happy smile and the innocence of a child. Hao, are you hungry? Feng touched his head and asked softly. Yes. The little guy blinked and looked at her, his eyes full of admiration. Mother will take you to wash your hands and then eat. She took his hand and walked forward. Xianyuan Mose sat at the table. When he saw her come out, he asked Leng Shuang and the others to set the table and prepare to eat. Not long after, Feng came back with Hao and sat at Xianyuan Mose's table. Leng Hua and the others sat at the table. The meal was prepared by several women in the village. It wasn't exquisite, but it was very farm-style. After they finished eating, they saw that the sky was about to darken. Feng said to them, I've been studying spirit arrays all this time. Today, I should be able to take you to Pill King Valley. Hearing this, Hui Lang couldn't help but be happy. Du Fan and the others also improved their strength when they went there. Moreover, it was said that it was a very good place to cultivate. They had long wanted to go there. She told them to let Ling Shuang take care of Hao. Then, she went to a place outside the village with Xianyuan Mose. She drew an array diagram on the ground and explained it to Xianyuan Mose. After breaking this array, she told him about the mysteries of it. In the future, he could also use this array diagram to reverse space transmission. Although the array diagram was given to her by Dan Wang, Mose was not an outsider. She naturally hoped that he would be able to use what she learned in useful. Xianyuan Mose's comprehension was also very high. Even if he hadn't studied array diagrams recently, he quickly understood after hearing Feng explanation. Chapter 3289. Not long after, the array was drawn. Everyone stood in the middle of the array. Feng formed a seal with both hands. Along with the surge of spiritual energy, wild wind blades surged around the array. Finally, it formed a vortex that swept them away and disappeared into the air in Dan Wang Valley. As the night gradually darkened, the lights also lit up. The flickering lights were as beautiful as fireflies in the night. Dan King stood at his main peak, stroking his beard as he looked at the sky. No one knew what he was thinking. Suddenly, a ray of light streaked across the night sky, and with a whoosh, it arrived at his valley. He looked in that direction in surprise. Because of the night and the distance, he couldn't see clearly. Thus, his figure directly swept out like a ghost and headed towards that direction. Feng and the others were transported out of the vortex. Once they landed, their figures swayed slightly and they couldn't stand steadily. Fortunately, they supported each other and didn't fall. Ghost Doctor, this is Dan Wang Valley? You were here the whole time last time? Hui Lang looked around excitedly. Yes, this is Dan Wang Valley. This Dan Wang Valley is surrounded by barriers. If not for the things that Master gave me, I wouldn't be able to enter here. She smiled and looked at Hao who was blinking his eyes and looking around in Leng Shuang's arms. She went forward and carried him over. Xinyuan Mose looked around, and his eyes flashed. I heard you say that this Dan Wang's strength is unfathomable. Now that I see it, he is indeed extraordinary. Yes, Feng Jiu replied with a smile and said, I'll take you to rest first. I'll go find Master and tell him. However, before he took a step, he heard a familiar and joyful voice. Oh my, I was wondering who would be so daring to barge into Dan Wang Valley. So it's you, little girl? A shadow flashed, and Dan Wang appeared in front of them. He was so fast that even Xinyuan Mose couldn't react in time. Xinyuan Mose's deep eyes moved slightly as he looked at the sage-like old man standing in front of him. He was secretly shocked. So fast, they arrived in front of them in an instant. If the other party wanted to attack them, they wouldn't even have time to defend themselves. Master, Feng Jiu saw him and smiled. I was just about to go look for you. Dan Wang's eyes swept over the few of them and finally landed on the child in Xinyuan Mose's and Feng Jiu's arms, who was blinking and looking at him. With a face full of curiosity, he asked, Girl, where did this child come from? This guy's a good figure. Who is he? With his sharp eyes, he naturally knew that Feng Jiu was still a virgin. Therefore, this child naturally couldn't be hers. Feng Jiu pursed her lips and smiled. She introduced, This is Xinyuan Mose, my fiancé. This little thing is the child we adopted. His name is Xinyuan Hao. This is Leng Hua and Leng Shuang. This is Hui Lang and Ying Yi. As she spoke, she paused and said to Xinyuan Mose and the others, This is my master, Dan Wang of Dan Wang Valley. Greetings, Dan Wang. Leng Hua and the others bowed respectfully. Dan Wang, Xinyuan Mose nodded slightly and also called out, I'm sorry for the sudden visit. Chapter 3290. Feng Jiu smiled as he listened. He lowered his head to look at the child in his arms and said softly, How quickly call me Grandpa. Grandpa! The little guy blinked his eyes and called out. His childish voice was not very proper, but it softened the hearts of those who heard it, especially Dan Wang, an old man who had no relatives. When he heard him call him Grandpa, he also responded repeatedly. He rummaged through his sleeves, tried to find some gifts for the child, but after rummaging left and right, all he took out were medicinal pills. Look, I don't have anything good to give the child. How about this? I'll arrange for you to rest first. Tomorrow, I'll take little Hao to the storeroom to pick a gift for himself. Hearing that, Feng Jiu smiled and said, Master, you don't have to spoil him so much. Let's go. I'll go with you, Dan Wang said, looking at Xinyuan Mose and smiling. Boy, you have good taste. Hearing that, Xinyuan Mose smiled slightly. Dan Wang has good taste too. To be able to take in Feng Jiu as his disciple and make Feng Jiu acknowledge him as his master was already not simple. Ha, of course. Dan Wang laughed happily and chatted with Xinyuan Mose along the way. Feng Jiu carried the child and followed beside them. From time to time, he would say a word or two, but most of the time, he would just watch them chat. Hui Lang and Ying Yi, who were following behind, saw this, and their eyes moved slightly. This Dan Wang was really amazing. He could actually make their master chat with him all the time, and the atmosphere was very harmonious. He was really not simple. Leng Hua and Leng Shuang looked at each other and smiled slightly. They followed quietly while looking at the scenery on the road. Not long after, the people of Dan Wang Valley heard that Feng Jiu had returned. They were all very happy, especially those alchemists and cultivators who were not in closed-door cultivation or refining pills. They all headed towards the mountain peak where Feng Jiu was. Who knew that before they could reach the top, they were stopped by some disciples. Dan Wang has given orders. The young valley master and the others have just returned today and are tired. Furthermore, it's getting late. If anyone wants to see her, wait until tomorrow. The disciple on guard raised his voice and told everyone to go back first. Hearing this, everyone was a little disappointed, but someone still asked, How long will young master stay this time? Will she leave? Unexpectedly, the disciple guarding the mountain path grinned and looked at the crowd. Everyone, don't worry. The young valley master and the others won't leave so quickly. They will stay here for a while and we'll be able to see the young Valley Master in the future. Hearing this, all the alchemists couldn't help but say excitedly, "That's great. That's really great." In the future, if they had anything they didn't understand about pills, they could ask the young Valley Master for advice. At this moment, everyone was relieved and left one after another, chatting happily along the way. At the cave residence, Fengjiu said to Leng Hua and the others, "You guys can stay in the cave residence where Du Fan and the others stayed. It's closer to here." Yes. The few of them responded and followed the disciple outside to familiarize themselves with the cave residence where they would stay in the future. "Zhe, you stay with me," Fengjiu said and looked at Xinyuan Mose, who was sitting at the side. Just as Xinyuan Mose was about to nod, he saw King of Pills widen his eyes. He stroked his beard and coughed loudly. For a moment, the two of them looked at him with astonishment. Chapter 3291. Hearing this, the two of them couldn't help but be stunned. Immediately after, Fengjiu couldn't help but laugh. Her crisp laughter spread throughout the cave, making Dan Wang look confused. Did he say something wrong? He was only speaking the truth. A man and a woman living together, wasn't that just like dry wood and a blazing fire? If one day it caught fire, the one to suffer would be Fengjiu. Thinking of this, he looked at Xinyuan Mose somewhat angrily. This brat actually didn't object to her suggestion of living together in a cave. It seemed like he was looking forward to it. Perhaps it was because Fengjiu was outstanding in all aspects, whether it was her way of doing things or her talent in cultivation, which made him happy. Moreover, he doted on her as if she were his own child. Naturally, he didn't want her to be taken by an unmarried brat. Xinyuan Mose blushed a little when this matter was brought up. He looked at Dan Wang, who was glaring at him, and cleared his throat, saying, "Dan Wang, you don't have to worry about this. The two of us know what we're doing." Fengjiu also pursed her lips and smiled, saying, "Master, aren't you meddling too much? This is between the two of us. Moreover, we've known each other for many years now. It's not like we don't understand each other. Moreover, we're only one step away from getting married." Hearing this, Dan Wang looked at the two of them strangely. He coughed lightly, stroked his beard, and stood up. All right. I won't meddle in the affairs of you young people. Rest early tonight." As he spoke, he walked out with his hands behind his back. After he left, Fengjiu and Xinyuan Mose looked at each other, and the two of them laughed at the same time. "I didn't expect him to be like this, Dan Wang," Xinyuan Mose said, shaking his head. Hearing this, Fengjiu chuckled. "That's right. In the beginning, I was quite wary of him, but after interacting with him for a while, I realized that he was always considerate of me, so I began to accept him." The two of them chatted for a while in the Immortal's Cave. Xinyuan Mose went to take a bath and then went to rest. When Fengjiu came back from his bath, he saw that Xinyuan Mose was already asleep on the bed. He dried his hair and then went to bed to rest. The moment she laid down, a pair of hands reached out and pulled her closer to his side. The warmth of his body spread between the two of them, causing her lips to curl up slightly. She closed her eyes and reached out to hug his waist as well. Leaning against his side, she fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, before the two of them could leave the cave after washing up, they heard a lively noise coming from outside. Xinyuan Mose raised his eyebrows slightly. "What's going on outside? It sounds very lively." As he spoke, he prepared to go out and take a look. "They should be the alchemists and cultivators of Dan Wang Valley," Fengjiu said as they walked out together. Sure enough, when they arrived outside, they saw familiar faces crowding around them, and all of them excitedly called out, "Young Master! Young Valley Master! You're finally back! Young Valley Master, don't leave this time! Young Valley Master, who is this?" Many people's gazes fell on Xinyuan Mose, who was dressed in a black robe and had an extraordinary bearing. Some of the cultivators saw his cultivation and secretly sized him up in surprise. Fengjiu smiled and greeted the crowd, then introduced him to them. "This is my fiancé, Xinyuan Mose. You can call him Yama Lord." Chapter 3292. Xinyuan Mose nodded slightly in response. He sized up the crowd without batting an eyelid. When he saw those cultivators, his heart skipped a beat. He didn't expect that other than Dan Wang. The cultivators here were also so outstanding. Fengjiu looked at the crowd and smiled. Don't worry, everyone. This time, we will be staying here for at least a few years. Indeed, without a few years, how could their strength compare to the sovereign of sky reaching and the others? Instead of going out to face danger, it was better to improve their strength first. Hearing this, the crowd responded happily. That's great. They surrounded Fengjiu and chatted for a while before leaving. She would be staying here for a few years, and there would be many opportunities for them to meet in the future. Even if they had something to ask, they weren't in a hurry. Watching the crowd leave, Xin Yuanmos glanced at her and said, You're quite popular here as the young Valley Master. I can see that these people like you very much. Fengjiu smiled. Perhaps the people here have been away from the world for a long time, so they don't have so much scheming. What they want is very simple. Moreover, as long as you can convince them, they naturally won't act one way or another behind your back. At the end of the day, it was also strength that spoke. Her strength had convinced them, so they acknowledged her as the young Valley Master. Otherwise, with their strength and cultivation, how could they so easily lower their heads and acknowledge someone? The two of them walked forward as they talked. Not long after, they saw Leng Hua and the others walking over with Howard. My Lord, Master, you come at the right time. Today, I'll bring you around the valley to familiarize you. As Fengjiu spoke, she took Hao from Leng Hua's arms. Hao, Mother will bring you around, okay? Okay. The child's soft voice was filled with joy. A pair of small hands wrapped around her neck as she leaned into her embrace. On this day, Fengjiu brought them around the valley to familiarize them with the place. He also told them about the surrounding terrain of Danwang Valley. It was also because Fengjiu and the others had already gone to Danwang Valley to cultivate in seclusion. Therefore, not long after they left, Sovereign Tongtian's men once again came to Four Corner City to search for Fengjiu and the others. However, this time, they returned empty-handed and there was no news at all. To the people of the upper realm, Fengjiu's group seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Even if many people secretly inquired about Fengjiu, they couldn't find any trace of him. In the Xiaoyao school, Wanyan Xianhua was lazily lying on a low rectangular table in the main hall. She played with her soft hair with one hand. Her seductive eyes were looking at Jun Jueshang, who was handling some affairs not far away. Nobody knew what she was thinking. She just kept staring at him. The main hall was very quiet. The two of them didn't make a sound. Jun Jueshang was busy with his affairs. Wanyan Xianhua just watched quietly. She didn't want to disturb him. She was very bored. She supported her head with one hand and sat sideways. Her beautiful eyes moved away from Jun Jueshang and fell on the outside of the hall. She didn't know what Fengjiu was doing now. She thought that she would come over. Who knew that she had provoked a strong enemy and was going to lie low for a while? That girl would actually lie low for a while. She really didn't expect. Chapter 3293. In her opinion, Fengjiu was a fearless person. Even if he was weaker than others, he would never back down. She hadn't expected that one day she would know how to avoid the sharp edge. This was also good. After all, there were many strong people in this place, especially the sovereign Tong Tian, who she had mentioned in the message. He was an extraordinary person. She was afraid that the main figures of the various forces in the upper world were no match for the sovereign Tong Tian. It was very smart of them to retreat temporarily. She didn't know how long they would stay in seclusion. They hadn't been in the upper world for a long time, but their reputation had spread far and wide. They had stirred up a storm in the upper world, and then suddenly disappeared. Perhaps with the passage of time, the people of the upper world would gradually forget about them. But she believed that in the near future, they would definitely return with a strong attitude. She was so engrossed in her thoughts that she didn't notice that Jun Jueshang, who was sitting not far away, had tidied up the things on the table. He looked at Wanyan Xianhua in front of him and saw that she was lazily supporting her head with one hand while looking outside. It seemed that she was lost in thought. He stood up, patted his robe, and prepared to walk out of the hall. His movement made Wanyan Qianhua come back to her senses. Seeing that he was about to leave, she stretched her waist and stood up with a yawn. It seemed that she didn't care about her image at all. When Jun Jushang walked in front of her, she immediately walked up to him. "Are you done with today's affairs? Where are you going next? Why don't we go down the mountain for a walk?" She had been here for a long time, but she had always stayed here and never left. To be honest, she really wanted to go out for a walk. However, if she went alone, she would feel bored. However, if he accompanied her, it would be different. Jun Jushang glanced at her indifferently. His eyes swept from her beautiful face to her loosened lapel. He slightly frowned. His originally cold face seemed to have become even colder in an instant. "Pay attention to your image in the Xiaoyao sect. Don't be so disheveled." His voice was cold and emotionless. "Don't be so disheveled." Hearing this, Wanyan Qianhua was startled. Her beautiful eyes narrowed as she lowered her head to look at her chest. She saw that the collar was slightly loose, the lapel was half open, and the full snow-white chest was faintly discernible. This kind of dress, in her opinion, was normal, and there was nothing to make a fuss about. After all, her clothes were relatively conservative. If she changed into her previous clothes, it would be different. Thus, she curled her lips and smiled charmingly. "How am I not properly dressed? This dress is clearly neatly worn. As for the chest here, She raised her slender white hand and lightly covered her red lips. She let out a joyful laugh and continued, "The chest here is also because I have a good figure. The curves of my breasts are alluring. I can't help it." Hearing this, Jun Jushang looked at her coldly. He didn't say anything more and immediately walked out. However, as soon as he took a step, one of his hands was hugged. Then, a pair of breasts came close to him, which made him frown even more. "What are you doing?" Chapter 3294. Didn't you see it? I didn't do anything. Wanyan Xinhua spread her hands and smiled charmingly. "Besides, even if I did do something to you, it would be normal. Besides, I didn't do anything to you. All I did was hug your arm. I didn't take advantage of you." Jun Jushang looked at her. He was about to shake her off, but now he looked at her deeply. His frown loosened. However, the alienation and indifference in his eyes became more obvious. "Wanyan Xinhua, I told you long ago that you don't need to waste time on me. I don't have any feelings for you. It's impossible for me to be tempted by you. You should give up on this idea as soon as possible." His indifferent voice paused. His eyes were as calm as water and as indifferent as ice. "You only have a good face. There are millions of women in this world. What makes you think that I would like you? In terms of appearance, there are no lack of beauties in the cultivation world. In terms of family background, your Wanyan family isn't even in the top 100 families here. In terms of strength, you can't even compare to the disciples of my sect. You are inferior in every aspect. What qualifications do you have to stand by my side?" Hearing those extremely cold and hurtful words, Wanyan Qianhua restrained the charming smile on her face. Her hand that was originally hugging his arm also unconsciously loosened. She just quietly looked at the immortal-like man in front of her. How could such a man say such hurtful words? However, Jun Jushang acted as if he didn't see the hurt in her eyes. With a cold expression, he continued, "I didn't ask people to throw you out because I wanted you to leave on your own. I gave you some face. But if you don't even want this face, then don't blame me for ordering you to be expelled." After saying that, he flicked his sleeves and walked away without looking back. Wanyan Qianhua stood there alone. She was silent for a long time. Wanyan Qianhua stood there quietly. She lowered her eyes and looked at her hand. Jun Jushang's cold and heartless words echoed in her ears. Suddenly, the corners of her mouth twitched, and she sneered. She asked herself again and again in her heart, "Wanyan Qianhua, is this what you want? You didn't care about anything to stay here. You didn't care about your face as a woman. You seduced me again and again. You were hurt by his cold words again and again. Is this what you want?" Yes. What he said was the truth. What qualifications did she have to stand by his side? What qualifications did she have to pester him again and again? For the first time, she felt her heart clench in pain. That kind of empty feeling made her feel as if all the strength in her body had been sucked out. There was a kind of coldness that rose from the soles of her feet to her heart, causing her to involuntarily tremble. She raised her hands and tightly hugged her own body. It turned out that loving someone wasn't just sweet. It would also cause heartache and hurt. And this kind of pain, this kind of hurt, was incurable. She stood in the hall for a long time. Only when the sky outside gradually darkened did she come back to her senses. However, she didn't lose her soul. She didn't look hurt, and she didn't shed a single tear. Even if her heart was bleeding, she still raised her head and curled the corners of her lips. She revealed a charming smile and walked out step by step, just like how she usually did. Chapter 3295. Wanyan Qianhua had a smile on her face. This smile, set off by her red dress, was extremely beautiful and moving. In the night, her beautiful eyes fell on the disciple who was guarding the door. She said in a soft and unhurried voice, "Open the door. I want to go out." Hearing this, the disciple was stunned. "Miss Wanyan wants to go out so late at night? It's not safe to go out so late at night. Is there something urgent? Why don't you go out tomorrow morning?" The place where the carefree sect was located was not an ordinary place. Outside of the sect was a forest. She didn't think it was a good idea for a girl to go out in the middle of the night. If something happened, it would be very troublesome. Moreover, Miss Wanyan had lived here for so long, and all the disciples in the sect knew that she was very close to their sect master. Moreover, she was the only one who dared to hug their sect master. Moreover, the two of them lived in the same bamboo forest. Many disciples in the sect were discussing whether their sect master would take a fancy to her and end up together with her. If something were to happen in the middle of the night, he wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. "It's fine. Open the door. I'm not a 3-year-old child. I can protect myself." Wanyan Qianhua smiled. However, her smile did not reach her eyes. Seeing this, the disciple hesitated and asked, "Miss Wanyan, does our sect leader know that you're leaving so late at night?" "He knows." Wanyan Qianhua smiled and played with her hair. "Hurry up, open the door. I'm leaving." Hearing this, the disciple and the disciple next to him looked at each other. Finally, the two of them opened the door. After the door was opened, she walked out step by step. In the night, her red robe fluttered in the wind. The two disciples only regained their senses when she disappeared into the night. Why did she leave so late at night? Could something have happened? A disciple asked worriedly. Yes, she didn't leave even when her family came to pick her up. Why did she leave alone tonight when the sky was already so dark? Could it be? The other disciple hesitated and didn't continue. When the person next to him heard this, he asked, "Could it be something? Tell me. Could he have quarreled with the sect leader?" The disciple looked at the man and asked, "Quarrel with the sect leader? How could this be? Does sect master look like someone who would quarrel with others? Should we report her leaving like this? Well, it's better to talk about it. Her expression doesn't seem right." One of them said as he closed the door and said, "I'll go and report. You stay here and watch." With that, he quickly ran away. Jun Jushang was sitting cross-legged in the bamboo forest with his eyes closed. The bamboo house and even the bamboo forest were silent until some hurried footsteps were heard. "Sectmaster." Outside, the middle-aged man stopped and called out respectfully. In the room, Jun Jushang was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. He didn't even open his eyes. He just asked indifferently, "What's the matter?" "Sectmaster, I just heard from the disciple guarding the door that Miss Wanyan left." After saying this, the middle-aged man couldn't help but look inside. Chapter 3296. "Leave," Jun Jushang said indifferently. Hearing this, the middle-aged man responded, "Yes." He turned around and walked out. He felt strange. A few days ago, Wanyan Qianhua's family came to pick her up, but she didn't want to leave. Why did she leave in the middle of the night? Could it be that she had a conflict with the sovereign? Also, what was the sovereign's intention? Could it be that he had no feelings for Wanyan Qianhua? Otherwise, why would he let her leave like that? The bamboo forest seemed to have regained its tranquility after the middle-aged man left. Jun Jushang slowly opened his eyes and calmly looked outside. It was unknown what he was thinking about. After a long while, he closed his eyes again and continued to sit cross-legged. The night was getting darker and darker. Wanyan Xianhua was slowly walking down the mountain path of the Xiaoyao sect. Step by step, she didn't have a smile on her face anymore. She didn't need to pretend anymore. That kind of sadness came from her body. Even if she didn't have any expression on her face, people could still feel her sadness. The clouds in the night sky surged. A bolt of lightning flashed across the night sky and lit up half of the night sky. Then, a thunderclap echoed in the sky. At this time, the people of the Xiaoyao sect had already gone to bed. Some of them were cultivating in their rooms. When they heard the thunder, someone walked out of his room and looked at the sky. He was surprised and said, "It's going to rain? Why is it suddenly raining?" While speaking, he hurriedly went into his room and closed the door. In the bamboo forest, Jun Jushang was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. When he heard the thunder, he opened his eyes. He looked outside and saw that the rain was like needles falling from the night sky. The drops of rain were getting bigger and bigger. They fell to the ground and disappeared into the soil. Looking at the sudden rain, he frowned. This rain was a little strange. The weather was normal during the day and the wind was gentle. Especially at night, it was cool. It shouldn't be raining. Why did it suddenly rain? He stood up and walked outside. He stood at the door and looked at the rain. His eyes moved. No one knew what he was thinking. After a while, he stepped into the rain. He was wearing a white robe. His body was emitting a layer of spiritual power. This layer of spiritual power formed a protective cover that blocked the rain. Even if he didn't open an umbrella, the falling rain couldn't fall on his body. He walked forward. His figure flashed. In the blink of an eye, he was out of the bamboo forest. Because of his fast speed, his boots didn't touch the soil and the rain on the ground. They were still white and flawless. The night wind was blowing, shaking the trees in the forest. The rain was beating against the leaves. When the raindrops fell on the body, it still hurt a little. And in this night, on the mountain path, Wanyan Xianhua did not find a place to hide from the rain, nor did she use anything to block it. She just walked slowly like this, letting the rain beat against her body and blurring her vision. Boom! Another clap of thunder resounded in the night sky. Thunder and lightning flashed in the wind and rain, causing the surroundings to emit a gloomy and cold aura. However, Wanyan Xianhua did not pay any attention to it. He continued to walk forward, step by step. Chapter 32:97. However, those Yin spirits did not dare to approach her. Instead, they followed her from a distance not far away, as if waiting for an opportunity to strike. Wanyan Xianhua, who was in a daze, did not know that Jun Jushang, who was dressed in white, was standing behind her, quietly watching her. The trees hid his figure, and his restrained aura did not alarm her. Looking at the woman who was walking in a sorry state in the rain, Jun Jushang's brows furrowed slightly. His eyes fell on her body, carrying a complicated expression. He watched her walk step by step, allowing the rain to fall on her body. He watched her dress get soaked by the rain, sticking to her body. The hem of her dress was stained with rain and mud on the ground, making her look very sorry. In the past, she was beautiful and charming. He had never seen her in such a sad state. Looking at her like this, he inexplicably felt uncomfortable in his heart. Those ghosts who were following Wanyan Xianhua were startled by Jun Jushang's arrival. They quietly dispersed, not daring to stay. At this time, because the rain was getting heavier, the mountain path was slippery. Wanyan Xianhua was careless, and her weak body slipped. She fell down and sat on the side of the mountain path. Almost at that moment, Jun Jushang instinctively wanted to go forward and support her. However, he did not know what to think, but he retracted his foot. He frowned and looked at her. He watched her sit on the ground for a long time without moving, but her body was slightly swaying. Just when he could not help but want to go forward, he saw her stand up with the help of a nearby tree and continue walking down step by step. Looking at that sorry figure gradually walking away, he looked at her with a complicated expression. He did not leave, but followed her from a distance, and followed her all the way. At night, when some wild beasts came out to hunt for food, they noticed him and quietly retreated. Because of this, even in the middle of the night, she did not encounter any attacks from wild beasts. After leaving the mountain path and the forest, she arrived at the foot of the mountain. Because of the pain in her heart and the cold in her body, she finally couldn't take it anymore. She staggered a few steps before her vision turned black and she fainted. Just as she was about to fall, a white figure suddenly appeared and caught her. Jun Jushang looked at the unconscious Wanyin Qianhua with a cold face. He pursed his lips and looked at her with a complicated expression. Then, he carried her and walked down the mountain. In the middle of the night, there was a knock on the door of a house at the foot of the mountain. A couple who were sleeping soundly got up and shouted unhappily, "Who is it? What are you doing so late at night?" He walked outside as he spoke, but he didn't open the door. Instead, he peeked through a small crack. The couple was startled when they saw Jun Jushang in white clothes. They hastily opened the door. "Sect leader, why are you here?" The middle-aged man recognized Jun Jushang. At this moment, he saw him standing at the door with a red-clothed woman in his arms. He hastily invited them in. Jun Jushang walked in with Wanyin Qianhua in his arms. He asked, "Where can we rest?" Chapter 3298. Jun Jushang said to the middle-aged man, "Go and boil the ginger soup. Tell your wife to come here." "Yes, yes." The middle-aged man hurriedly replied and quickly walked out. After a short while, the woman came in. "Master, help her change her wet clothes." He looked at the woman and ordered. "Yes." The woman stepped forward to take over the unconscious Wanyin Qianhua. She saw the sect master turn around and close the door. Then, she took off the woman's wet clothes and found a set of clothes that she hadn't worn before. Then, she helped her to the bed and covered her with a quilt. After doing all this, the sweat on her forehead dripped down, but she didn't dare to stay. Instead, she opened the door and said to Jun Jushang outside, "Sect master, this girl has a fever. Her whole body is hot." Jun Jushang came in and checked Wanyin Qianhua's pulse. Then he took out a pill and put it in her mouth. At this time, the middle-aged man's voice could be heard. "Master, the ginger soup is ready. Give it to me. I will bring it in." The woman took the ginger soup and signaled him to wait outside. After all, the woman inside was brought in by the master. Naturally, she couldn't come in casually. "Master, here is the ginger soup." The woman brought the ginger soup to the bedside. Jun Jushang helped Wanyin Qianhua up and held her in his arms. She couldn't open her mouth because she was unconscious. He gently pinched her chin and said to the woman, "Hey." "Yes, yes." The woman scooped a spoonful and carefully fed her. She drank some of the soup and some of it flowed out from the corner of her mouth. The master took a handkerchief and wiped the corners of her mouth. After feeding her the soup, the woman got up and left. When they were outside, the middle-aged man pulled his wife aside and asked in a low voice, "How is it inside?" "What do you mean, how is it?" "That girl was drenched in the rain and is unconscious. The master is taking care of her." She looked back and said, "I don't know who that girl is. She doesn't look like an ordinary person from the way the master treats her." The middle-aged man had a strange look on his face. "What do you think the master is thinking? The Xiaoyao sect was up there. Why didn't he bring the girl back? Why did you come to our house instead?" "Who knows?" All right, go to the front and don't disturb them." The woman pushed him forward, but she was also curious. Inside the room, Jun Jushang helped Wanyin Qianhua to lie down. After helping her pull up the blanket, he sat by the bed and looked at her. His heart was like stone. He had never been moved by any woman, and he didn't understand what love was in this world. Thus, when he saw her so sad, he was very puzzled. He had never given her a good look, so why was she attracted to him? The two of them hadn't spent much time together, and most of the time, he had been cold to her. He had never given her a glimmer of hope, so why would she be moved? Why was her heart tied to him? so much so that he would end up in such a sorry state because of his words. He had said those words to make her realize the difficulties and back off. It was also because it was impossible for the two of them to be together. She was a girl in her prime, and her beauty was unparalleled. When he founded the Xiao Yao sect, her grandfather wasn't even born yet. How could a person like him and a girl like her walk together? Chapter 32:99. That night, he stayed by her bedside and put a cold handkerchief on her forehead to cool her down. Her body temperature returned to normal when the sky gradually brightened. He looked at the woman who was sleeping soundly. He stood up and walked out, closing the door behind him. The couple woke up early and made some porridge. They wanted to give it to the sect master and the young lady. Therefore, when they saw Jun Jushang, they quickly put down what they were doing and went forward to greet him. Sect master, if she wakes up, tell her that you brought her back to take care of her. Don't mention me to her. Jun Jushang looked at them and instructed them. Hearing this, the couple was startled. Seeing that he was still looking at them, they quickly came back to their senses and replied, "Yes, yes." However, they felt strange. Why didn't the sect master let the young lady know? It was obviously the sect master who brought her here. Jun Jushang left them some gold coins and left after giving them some instructions. After sending Jun Jushang off, the couple looked at each other. In the end, the middle-aged man pushed the woman and said, "Go in and see if the young lady is waking up." "Okay," the woman replied and went in to take a look. She saw that the young lady was still sleeping soundly. Therefore, she walked out quietly. Wanyan Xianhua didn't wake up until noon. When the woman saw her, she quickly went forward and helped her up. She said happily, "Young lady, you're finally awake." Wanyan Xianhua rubbed her temples. She raised her beautiful eyes and looked at the woman. Then, she looked at the room and asked, "Why am I here?" When she spoke, her voice was hoarse and lacked her usual charm. "It was raining heavily last night. You fainted in front of my house. We heard the noise and brought you home." The woman said, "Young lady's clothes were wet last night. I helped you change into a new set of clothes. I washed and dried your clothes. You can wear them later." Then, she poured a cup of water and said, "Young lady, drink some water to moisten your throat. I made some porridge. Eat some to warm your body." Then she walked out. Wanyan Xianhua held the cup and drank water. After drinking the water, she felt her throat moisten a lot. She leaned against the bed and sat down. She still felt a little weak in her body, so she didn't get up. Outside, the middle-aged man watched as the woman scooped the porridge and was about to send it to the back. He asked, "Is that girl awake?" "She's awake." The woman responded and went to the back with the porridge. Seeing this, the middle-aged man said to the woman's back, "Then you stay at home and take care of her. I'm going out to hunt." With a girl at home, it wasn't convenient for a man like him to stay there. It was better for him to go out and hunt for game to add on to the dishes. Inside the room, the woman busily went in and out to serve Wanyan Xianhua. After washing up, she brought the porridge forward and said, "Miss, your body is still weak, so you can't eat anything too oily. Have a bowl of plain porridge first." "Thank you," Wanyan Xianhua said as she took the porridge and ate it herself. The woman sat at the side and watched. Seeing her elegant behavior, her eyes couldn't help but flash. She smiled and said, "Young lady, you were drenched in the rain last night and had a fever. Although the fever has gone down, your body is still weak. My husband and I are the only two people in my house. You should stay here and take care of your body." Wanyan Xianhua knew that she was weak and couldn't leave even if she wanted to. So she said, "I'll have to trouble you." Chapter 3300. Wanyan Xianhua didn't refuse. She felt weak all over. After eating, she lay down. She heard the woman quietly walk out and close the door. The entire room quieted down. She lay on the bed and quietly looked at the ceiling. Only when she was tired did she fall into a deep sleep. She recuperated here until 3 days later when she felt much better. Then, she finally walked out of the room. She had stayed in the room for the past few days. When she suddenly came out and saw the blazing sun in the sky, she couldn't help but squint. "Miss, how do you feel today? The woman saw her come out and hurriedly asked. Wanyan Qianhua revealed a smile. She looked at the woman and said, I've troubled you these past few days. Now that my body has recovered, it's time to leave. As she spoke, she took out a bottle of medicinal pills from her sleeve. You are all cultivators. There are a few medicinal pills in here that can help you advance. Consider it my repayment for your care these past few days. The middle-aged man standing to the side saw this and hurriedly waved his hand. You can't accept this. You can't accept this. How can we accept this? They took care of her under the sect master's orders. How could they take her things? This wasn't appropriate. That's right, Mississippi. Take it back. These medicinal pills are precious. We can't accept them. The woman didn't dare to accept them. Wanyan Qianhua smiled and said, Take it. These are no longer of any use to me. I'll just do you a favor. As she spoke, she stuffed the bottle of medicinal pills into the woman's hands. Then she said to the two, Farewell. With that, she walked out. When a couple saw this, they couldn't help but look at each other. The two of them followed her out. They watched her figure gradually disappear into the distance. When she disappeared from their sight, the woman said, Will it work if you give us medicinal pills? The middle-aged man thought for a moment and said, Take it. When the sect master comes, just let him know. On the other side, Wanyan Qianhua, who had left, did not return to the Wanyan family, nor did she return to the sect. Instead, she went to the extremely dangerous training forest to train. She left for a few years, and no one heard any news of her. Elder Mei, who had been with Du Fan and the others, had not seen Fengjiu and the others since he woke up. There was no news of Howard either. Even when he asked Du Fan and the others, they were unwilling to tell him. One day, after finishing his work, Old Mei looked at the sky and sighed softly. He shook his head and walked toward the front yard. When he heard the sound of a zither, he was startled. Then, he headed toward the back of the mountain. When he arrived at the back of the mountain, he saw Qin Xian practicing the guqin. He stood not far away and waited, watching and listening. Qin Xian stopped practicing after one song and looked at Elder Mei. She might have sensed his arrival. What's the matter, Elder Mei? She asked, looking at him with some confusion. Elder Mei thought for a moment and walked forward. He sighed and said, Qin Xian, you should know where they went, right? I'm not an outsider. Why didn't you tell me? When she heard this, Qin Xian said indifferently, Master only told me that they were going to cultivate in seclusion. However, she didn't mention where they were going. I didn't ask either. Chapter 33:01. Upon hearing this, Elder Mei was slightly surprised. He did not expect Qin Xian to be more open-minded than he was. She even trusted Fengjiu unconditionally. For a moment, his face reddened. He was an old man, but he was not as clear-headed as a young girl. Thinking of this, he inexplicably let out a sigh of relief. The breath that had been in his heart since he woke up seemed to have dissipated at this moment. He smiled and said, You're right. I was thinking too much. You can continue practicing your guqin. I'll go back first. After saying this, he turned and left. Qin Xian saw that his footsteps were much lighter than before. Only then did she retract her gaze. She placed her hands on the strings of the guqin and gently plucked the strings. For a moment, the melodious sound of the guqin spread through the back of the mountain. It was sometimes light and sometimes sharp. Time was like quicksand between one's fingers. If one said it was fast, it was not fast. If one said it was slow, it was hard to grasp. The scenes of the past seemed to have happened yesterday. However, when one carefully thought about it, one would realize that 5 years had passed unknowingly. In these 5 years, the upper world was not at peace. The first 3 years were considered peaceful, and there were no major events or disturbances. However, in the recent 2 years, various forces began to move in secret. In just 2 years, the forces of the Devil Lord, the forces of the Sovereign Tontian, and the forces of the Black Tortoise formed a 3-legged cauldron. They divided the territory, and each ruled as a king. Compared to other forces, these 3 forces could be said to be the largest and most feared. However, they did not stop gathering forces. Instead, they began to rope in other forces. Compared to the devil cultivators and the sovereign Tantion who killed those who disobeyed them, the sovereign Tantion who was righteous won the support of many righteous cultivators. Now that there was turmoil everywhere, the situation was becoming more and more oppressive. However, these people seemed to have forgotten about Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu, who had disappeared for 5 years. This year, at the Immortal Sect's Immortal Ascension stairs, another person walked out in the middle of the night. This person had a strong waist and a bear's back. He was dressed in a black robe and held a large saber in his hand. His entire person exuded an awe-inspiring aura. He was none other than Guan Shilin, who had been cultivating in the mortal world for many years. Right now, he had relied on his own strength to climb the Immortal Ascension stairs and arrived in the upper realm where his younger sister was. Therefore, the moment he descended the Immortal Ascension stairs, he began to ask around for information. Who would have thought that they had actually disappeared from this place for 5 years? When they arrived at Sifang City, Guan Shilin frowned. He knew that they would encounter a lot of trouble on their way here, but he didn't expect that even their enemies would be so powerful that they disappeared without a trace. Would they be in danger? Instinctively, he didn't think so. Based on his understanding of Fengjiu, they should be cultivating somewhere to increase their strength. However, he was rather surprised that they were able to live in seclusion for 5 years without knowing anything about the world. He wondered when they would return. I wonder what level of strength they've reached now. Now that they had returned, they shouldn't have to fear anyone in this world anymore, right? Thinking of this, his heart was burning with excitement. He couldn't help but look forward to the day when he would meet them again. Chapter 3302. In these 5 years, many people had changed. Wanyan Xianhua, who had disappeared for 5 years, had become famous in the past few months because he had single-handedly destroyed a base of demonic cultivators and killed thousands of demonic cultivators. Everyone knew about him. Her strength had increased a lot in these 5 years. She was still dressed in red and was still a lazy and seductive beauty. However, she was also known as a cold-blooded and heartless ice beauty. When Jun Jueshang, who was in the Xiaoyao sect, heard the news about her single-handedly destroying thousands of demonic cultivators, Jun Jueshang practiced his swordsmanship for an entire day in the bamboo forest. In Danwang Valley, Xianyuan Mose, who was dressed in a black robe, was standing with his hands behind his back. He was looking at the little figure practicing his swordsmanship on the grass in front of him. When his deep black eyes fell on the figure, there was admiration and affection. However, who was already 6 years old, was skillfully practicing his swordsmanship. His delicate and outstanding little face already had a maturity and experience that was different from ordinary children. At this moment, he was practicing his swordsmanship seriously. His delicate little face was tense, and his little lips were pursed. His face was full of coldness, and he looked somewhat similar to Xianyuan Mose. It was not the appearance that was similar, but the expression that was somewhat similar to his. After he finished practicing his set of swordsmanship, he stopped and put the sword in his hand behind his back. He walked towards Xianyuan Mose and respectfully bowed. He called out, "Father." Although he kept a straight face and tried his best to make himself look more mature, the light in his eyes still made people feel that it was funny. The person in front of them was a child, but he was pretending to be an adult. It looked a little funny. Xianyuan Mose looked at the child, who was hoping to be praised by him, and nodded. He said, "You've improved since yesterday. Not bad." As soon as he finished speaking, he saw the child in front of him finally break into a smile. He no longer pulled a long face and went forward to hug his father's leg, unable to hide his joy as he said, "Father, how will definitely work harder. How? Will also work hard to cultivate and become stronger so that I can protect you and mother in the future." Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose's lips curved slightly, revealing a faint smile, but his tone was still cold. "You're already so old, you have to stand properly. You're a boy, so you can't act like a spoiled girl. You have to learn to take responsibility." Hearing this, Howard hurriedly let go of his hand and stood up straight, looking up at him. Yes, Howard knows. Howard doesn't dare to forget father's teachings. Today's sword training will end here. Go learn alchemy. Study hard, study hard. I'll ask you how you're doing later, Xinyuan Mose said as his gaze fell on Howard. Yes, he responded and was about to run away. But when he thought of his father's daily teachings, he immediately bowed respectfully and left. Just as he was about to leave, he saw Dan Wang in a white robe walking over with a smile. Howard hurriedly called out, "Grandfather." "Ha, her is going to learn alchemy? Go. Study hard," Dan Wang said with a smile. After Hao came forward, he gently patted Hao-er's head to let him go. Goodbye, grandfather." Hao-er responded and bowed to him before leaving. "Why is Dan Wang here?" Xinyuan Mose looked at the old man walking over and asked. Chapter 33:03. Hearing this, Xinyuan Mose only said, "I'm doing this for his own good." He's not an ordinary person, so naturally, he can't grow up carefree like an ordinary child. Being strict is only a good thing for him. In the future, this will save his life in dangerous situations. That's true, but this child is still so young. Dan Wang couldn't bear to part with him. That child was lively and mischievous when he was young, but since he was 2 or 3 years old, he had been teaching him strictly. That child was also someone who could endure hardships. Whatever they said, he would do. Although he was young, he was already very capable. In the future, as long as a Jew's child is a boy, I will teach him like this. Moreover, I will be even stricter, Xinyuan Mose said slowly. He didn't feel that he had done anything wrong. As long as the child had the ability to protect himself, they could be at ease. How? Or would face many dangers in the future. He was just making preparations in advance to teach him how to deal with them. When Dan Wang heard this, he couldn't help but smile and ask, "What about the girl?" Hearing Dan Wang's words, Xinyuan Mose's expression softened. It was as if he was already imagining what his and a Jew's daughter would look like. Immediately, a smile overflowed on his face. He said, "A girl naturally has to be well protected. Of course, she has to learn to be capable. Yes, if it's a girl, I will keep her by my side and hold her in the palm of my hand. I won't let anyone hurt her." Daughters were not like sons. Daughters had to be pampered, especially his and a Jew's daughter. When the time came, she would definitely be very cute and delicate. As her father, he naturally had to protect her well. Dan Wang looked at Xinyuan Mose, who was already daydreaming, and couldn't help but shake his head. He smiled and said, "It's too early to talk about it now. You're not married yet." As he spoke, he coughed softly and asked, "That girl hasn't broken through yet." "It should be soon," Xinyuan Mose said as he looked at the cave abode. In the past 5 years, the two of them had been cultivating most of the time. They had also advanced one after another. This time, he had advanced to the Divine King level before her. She had been in seclusion for a long time, but had not broken through yet. However, counting the days, she should have broken through during this period of time. They had been here for 5 years, waiting for her to successfully break through before leaving Dan Wang Valley. Although they didn't go out in the past 5 years, they knew the outside world like the back of their hands. Every once in a while, Dufan would report the outside world to them. Because of this, they knew that the world was in chaos. The few people around you should have come out of seclusion in the next few days. Although each of them has the help of medicinal pills, your advancement is really frightening. Dan Wang shook his head and said with a smile, "In this valley, there are only a few freaks like you. 5 years is not a short time." As Xinyuan Mose spoke, he looked at King of Pills and said, "We can't continue to stay here either. There's a storm brewing outside, and it's time to go out. I just don't know how strong our enemies have become in these 5 years." Hearing this, Dan Wang didn't say anything. He just stroked his beard and remained silent. 5 years was enough to change a lot. As for how to change it, that was their business. Chapter 33:04. After watching Dan Wang leave, Xinyuan Mose stood in silence for a while before leaving as well. Now, all they could do was wait for Fengjiu to come out of seclusion. Due to the competition between the various factions, Sovereign Tontian had set his sights on the 4 great sects and schools. He had sent people to the sects to persuade them to submit to him. Otherwise, what awaited them would be the destruction of their sects. Because of this, the leaders of the various sects felt that dark clouds were looming over their heads and were extremely worried. Just as the leaders of the various sects were discussing and were about to ask Sovereign Tontian for help, they received another piece of news. Sovereign Tontian had plotted against Sovereign Tontian and was currently unable to fend for himself. In the sects, CK and Mu Xin sat below and quietly listened to the discussions between the leaders and elders of the various sections. Seeing them frowning and sighing from time to time, the two of them looked at each other with worry in their eyes. Sovereign Skirich was not a heretical cultivator, nor was he a devil cultivator, nor was he a cultivator of the righteous path. He had his eyes on the great sects, and if they didn't submit to him, they would definitely be destroyed. With the strength of the various sects, even if they had disciples all over the place, what could they do? No matter how many people they had, they would not be as strong as Sovereign Tontian. One had to know that he alone was enough to destroy a sect. The two of them lowered their eyes and thought to themselves, 5 years have passed. Where is our master now? If they were here, perhaps there would be a solution? Thinking of this, the two of them secretly shook their heads. How could there be a solution? Although their master's strength was outstanding, it was impossible for him to reach the Divine King level in 5 years. The strength of a Divine King was not something that anyone could withstand, even if they had an ancient divine beast. Given the current situation, what do you think we should do? One of the leaders asked as he looked at the crowd. Sigh. One of the sect masters sighed and said, We had placed all our hopes on Sovereign Black Tortoise. Now that we heard that Sovereign Black Tortoise was ambushed, I'm afraid no one has the ability to fight against Sovereign Tontian. Yes, what we're afraid of is facing Sovereign Tontian. If he doesn't appear, it'll be fine. But if he does, I'm afraid we won't be his match. Everyone said one sentence after another. At this point, they fell silent again. No one had a good idea. However, right at this moment, one of the sect leaders looked at the crowd and said, Everyone, do you still remember the prophecy of Elder Tianji? Tianji Z. Everyone was stunned. They looked at each other and pondered for a moment. Is it because of what he said? He was referring to Fengjiu. However, she had disappeared for 5 years, and there was no news of her at all, regardless of whether she appeared or not. Even if she did, how strong could she have become in 5 years? No matter how strong he is, I'm afraid he can't compare to Sovereign Tontian. That's true, but since she is the chosen one, she must have her own strengths. Moreover, I heard that the Holy Prince from the Holy Temple will be coming out soon. Another elder said, looking at the crowd, It's impossible for us to submit to Sovereign Tontian. Since that's the case, we can only give it our all. Chapter 33:05. At this point, one of the sect leaders looked at CK and Mu Xin and asked, You too are Fengjiu's disciples. Have you really not heard anything about them in the past 5 years? CK and Mu Xin looked at each other and smiled bitterly. When the two masters left, they didn't tell us where they were going, so we really don't know their whereabouts. We also don't have any news about them. Even if they did, they wouldn't have dared to leak any information about them without their master's permission. Hearing their words, the crowd thought for a moment and didn't say anything more. Instead, they discussed among themselves, if we want to fight against the Sovereign of Sky reaching, then the 4 major sects and the 4 major factions must join forces. When we return to our respective sects, we can send the weaker disciples back to their respective clans and leave the stronger disciples behind to fight. This will reduce the number of casualties. Hearing this, the crowd nodded. That was true. If the weaker disciples participated in this battle, they would only end up dying. They naturally hoped that there would be some seedlings left in their sects and didn't want the entire sect to be destroyed. Another thing is, we can spread the news and invite all the strong cultivators to fight this battle with us. I believe that there are many strong cultivators from all over the world. As long as we spread the news, there will definitely be people who will come help us. I mean, that's fine. The crowd nodded in agreement. Another thing is, we can send someone to the Divine Temple and ask the people there to help us. CK and Mu Xian listened quietly and watched as they discussed. In the end, everything was settled and the sect leaders and elders left. They were about to leave when the sect leader called out to them. "Wait a moment, you two." The sect leader walked over with his hands behind his back and called out to them. "Sect leader." The two turned around and bowed to him, asking, "Is there anything else you want us to do, sect leader?" The sect leader looked at them deeply and said, "Do you know why the other venerables didn't participate in this discussion, but the two of you did?" Hearing this, their eyes flickered and they understood. However, they didn't say much and only cupped their hands and said, "Please tell us, sect leader." Seeing this, the sect leader sighed. "You don't have to play dumb with me. I'm sure you know my intentions. You heard what I said just now. I won't say anything else. Think about it carefully." With that, he walked out, leaving the two behind. When he came closer, Mu Xian looked at CK and said, "Sect leader, you want us to inform Master." CK smiled bitterly. What else could it be? Although we say that we don't have news, sect leader, we don't. Even though we don't know anything about Master, we know how to contact Master and the others. Speaking of this, CK sighed. In the past 5 years, although we have the Master's Communication J tablet, we haven't used it even once. This time, the sect master has said so, and the matter is indeed not small. No matter what, we should report to the masters. As for whether they will come back or not, it will depend on the two masters. Chapter 33:06. After the people from the various sects returned to their sects, they quickly arranged the matters in their sections. At the same time, they spread the news and invited powerful cultivators from all over to prepare for the battle with Sovereign Tongtian. The gathering place was the Blue Star Immortal Sect. Once the news spread, it caused a huge uproar everywhere. After some people heard the news, they strengthened the guards of their own families and were on high alert. Some people brought their families to other places to avoid the big thing that was about to happen. Although there were many powerful cultivators from all over the place, after the news spread, very few cultivators went to Four Corner City and the Blue Star Immortal Sect. Some people had extraordinary strength, but because they had family members, they could not leave. Their family members did not want them to face such a powerful cultivator and experience such a battle that would definitely kill them. However, there were some cultivators who were alone and had no worries. They went to the Blue Star Immortal Sect to prepare to help. There were also cultivators who wanted to take advantage of this matter to make a name for themselves and went to the Blue Star Immortal Sect. After hearing the news, Du Fan and the others did not do anything else. They only paid attention to the movements of all parties. In the past 5 years, they had expanded and established an extraordinary force in the upper realm. In the open, there were a few large sections. In the dark, the power of Yindian was enough to cover all forces, causing all parties to be wary. However, in the past 5 years, the people of Yindian had appeared and disappeared mysteriously. No one could find out about them, let alone whether they were good or evil. In Four Corner City, Guanxilin drank wine and ate meat. He narrowed his eyes as he listened to the discussions of the people in the restaurant. He ate the last piece of soy sauce meat on his plate, burped, wiped his mouth, and shouted, "Waiter, the bill." His deep voice was full of energy, causing some people who had not noticed him to look at him and size him up. Someone asked, "Brother, are you going to the Blue Star Immortal Sect?" Guanxilin glanced at the man and said, "No." He glanced at the waiter who was trotting over. After asking how much it was, he stood up and paid the bill. Just as he was about to leave, the cultivator's voice was heard again. "And here I thought you were some kind of hero. Turns out you're just a coward." "Ha ha. Brotherly, you think too highly of him. Look, he only has brute force. He's just a mystic. How can he compare to us?" A cultivator at the same table laughed and looked at Guanxilin mockingly. "That's right. If such a person were to go, he would most likely be killed. "It's no wonder that he doesn't dare to go," another cultivator said as he cast a contemptuous glance at Guanxilin. Hearing their words, the people in the restaurant couldn't help but hold their breaths. The strength of these people could be considered strong. It was said that they were experts who answered the call to go to the Blue Star Immortal Sect to help. In the past 2 days, they had already caused a lot of trouble. Many cultivators who couldn't bear it any longer were seriously injured after fighting with them. In this place, their names had also spread. However, it wasn't a good reputation. It was just a bad reputation for bullying the weak. The people in the restaurant looked at the burly man and couldn't help but gulp. The burly man had a biting cold aura. Only a few people dared to provoke someone like him. Although he was a mystic, he was still enough to make people wary. Chapter 3307. A cold light flashed through Guanxilin's eyes as he looked at the leg that was stretched out to trip him. He acted as if he didn't see it and took a step forward. However, he didn't step over it, but instead stepped on the leg that was stretched out horizontally. Crack! Hiss! When the sound of bones breaking rang out, the cultivator's shrill scream also rang out, causing everyone in the restaurant to feel their hearts skip a beat. My foot! My foot! You actually dared to break my foot! The cultivator's face was pale, and beads of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He trembled as he retracted his foot, but at this time, the pain from the broken leg was so great that it couldn't bear any more force. When everyone in the restaurant saw this scene, they couldn't help but gasp. How dare this man? How dare he break that person's foot? This time he's in trouble. As if they could already foresee the man's miserable end, the people in the restaurant couldn't help but secretly shake their heads. Wouldn't it be fine if he endured it for a while? Now, it was hard to say if this man could even keep his life. Guanxilin didn't even look at him. After stepping on the cultivator's foot, he continued to walk forward. He didn't even frown. It was as if he didn't step on the cultivator's foot, but on the ground. He wanted to leave, but how could the two cultivators who had regained their senses let him go? They immediately stood up angrily and shouted, "Stop right there!" With a vicious shout, a palm wind was sent towards Guanxilin's back. Guanxilin easily dodged without even looking back. He didn't want to fight in the restaurant and cause the owner of the restaurant to lose his business. Thus, he moved and went down the stairs. Seeing Guanxilin go to the first floor, the cultivators' faces were as cold as ice, especially the cultivator whose foot was broken. He said to the two cultivators in a sinister tone, "It's fine if this person doesn't respect me, but he doesn't respect the two of you." How hateful! Although the two cultivators were trying to sow discord, that person didn't even look at them before going downstairs. The contempt in his actions towards them had truly infuriated them, especially since they had been humiliated in front of so many people in the restaurant. If they didn't do anything, how could they become famous in the future? Thinking of this, they heavily snorted. This brat has no respect for anyone. Let's see how we'll teach him a lesson he'll never forget. As they spoke, the two of them followed the man down the stairs. They saw that the man didn't approach them and was instead walking out from the first floor. At that moment, the two of them looked at each other and simultaneously attacked the man in black in front of them. When the people on the first floor saw the fight, they couldn't help but stand up and retreat to the side. However, the man in black didn't even look back and took a step forward. His speed was so fast that he easily avoided the attacks of the two cultivators behind him, causing them to hit nothing but air. In a flash, the man in black was already out of the restaurant. Seeing this scene, the owner's eyes flashed and his gaze fell on Guanxilin. Outside, the people on the street saw the two cultivators chasing after him and automatically dodged. At this moment, the man who had been dodging and not fighting back finally raised his hand and caught the other cultivator's fist. His hand bent down and the sound of bones breaking rang out. Chapter 3308. Bang! His body fell heavily to the ground, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. The man struggled to stand up, but he fell back to the ground after supporting himself. Seeing this, The other person drew his sword from his waist and swung it at Guanxilin. However, the seemingly ferocious strike was like a child playing with a sword in Guanxilin's eyes. Guanxilin did not even look at it. He dodged to the side, and as he dodged the attack, he raised his hand and clenched it into a fist. His fist was imbued with a hidden force as it landed on the area between the man's thumb and index finger. With a miserable shriek, the man's sword fell to the ground. He quickly covered his hand and retreated. His face was filled with shock as he looked at the black-robed man. Who are you? Tell me your name if you have the guts." The cultivator looked at him in horror, but he still shouted fiercely. He wanted to know his name, as if he wanted to settle the score with him in the future. Guanxilin glanced at the man. Then his gaze swept across the man on the ground and the pale-faced cultivator who was standing in front of the restaurant and was about to sneak away. Suddenly, he strode forward and pulled the man out with one hand. "What's the use of keeping your cultivation for a vicious person like you?" As soon as he finished speaking, he crippled the cultivator's cultivation. No. The cultivator screamed in horror. However, his opponent was too fast. He only felt the strength leave his body in an instant. His limbs went limp and he fell to the ground. Seeing this, the other two people's faces turned pale. A sense of fear rose from the bottom of their hearts, causing them to involuntarily shiver. They instinctively wanted to escape, and they did so. The man who was punched by Guanxilin turned around and took a few steps forward, but Guanxilin had already pulled him back. He also crippled his cultivation and threw him to the side. Don't cripple my cultivation. I apologize to you. I apologize. I won't dare to do it again." The person sitting on the bed said in a trembling voice. Because he had been kicked, he hadn't recovered yet. Seeing him walk over step by step, he was so scared that he peed in his blanket. The surrounding people stared at the black-robed man in surprise. They watched as he stepped forward and crippled that person's cultivation. It was fine if he didn't make a move, but when he made a move, he crippled those three people's cultivation. Such a straightforward and decisive method caused everyone's hearts to tremble. This person was definitely not a fish in a pond. After Guanxilin crippled their cultivation, he did not pay any more attention to them. This kind of person had offended too many people. Now that his cultivation had been crippled, it was unknown if he would be able to leave Four Corner City alive. He turned around and left, walking along the main street. During this period of time, he had been gathering information in Four Corner City. Now that he had gathered enough information, it was time to find a place to stay. As for where, it was naturally his younger sister's Feng Manor. Because he had inquired about the place during this period of time, he followed the main street and headed towards the Feng Manor. He did not stop. However, because he had crippled those three people's cultivation in front of the restaurant, quite a few families in the city had already noticed him. Thus, when the people following him saw him arrive in front of the Feng Manor's gate, they could not help but be stunned. Chapter 3309. What? You're saying that someone actually went into the Feng Manor? When the Xiao family's head heard the news, he could not help but frown and ask, "What kind of person is that? Do you know his background?" Ever since Feng Jiao and the others left 5 years ago, there had been no one living there. However, he had ordered people to go to the Feng Manor every once in a while to clean it up. He had also sent people to secretly monitor the Feng Manor, hoping that Feng Jiao and the others would one day return. However, 5 years had passed, and there had been no news of them at all. He never thought that he would hear that someone had actually entered the manor today. That person was truly audacious. Family head, that person was wearing black clothes. He had a sturdy waist and a bear's back. He didn't seem to be 30 years old, but his strength was outstanding. He crippled the cultivation of 3 flying immortals on the street. Furthermore, that man was not a spirit cultivator, but a profound cultivator. His aura was outstanding, and he did not seem like an ordinary person. As the hidden guard reported this, he thought of the person he had seen earlier. He was only a profound cultivator, but he had extraordinary strength. Furthermore, he dared to cripple the cultivation of 3 flying immortals by himself. That person's methods and style were indeed not something an ordinary person could compare to. Hearing this, the Xiao family's head pondered for a while before saying, "It seems that I really need to go and see just what kind of person he is." The other family clans also knew about the news that the Xiao family had received. They did not pay much attention to the Feng manor that had been abandoned for 5 years. After all, Feng Jiao and the others had disappeared for 5 years. It was hard to say whether or not they would appear again. The reason they paid attention to this place was because of the recent turmoil in the world. Naturally, the movements in the city could not be hidden from the spies they had sent out, especially today's matter. That profound cultivator had crippled 3 flying immortals by himself. His strength could not be underestimated. They were naturally curious about this person's background. After entering the Feng Manor, the people from a Xiao family will definitely go and see what's going on. Just send someone to secretly keep an eye on him. If there's any movement, report back immediately, one of the family heads ordered, having his subordinates continue to keep an eye on him. At the same time, the people from the other families and factions did as they were told. Some people were even thinking that this person had to go to the Feng Manor, of all places. Could be that he had some sort of relationship with Feng Jiao. At the same time, inside the Feng Manor, Guan Shilin went in to take a look. Seeing that the manor was clean and tidy, it was as if someone often cleaned it. Thus he nodded to himself. He had heard that the Xiao family would send people to clean up every once in a while. It seemed to be true. He looked around the mansion and couldn't help but smile. So we're here. Xiao Jiao and the others live here. The environment is not bad. He walked around the entire residence, and indeed, there was not a single person. Moreover, the main door was not locked, so who would dare to come in here? Not to mention the fact that the Xiao family's people were secretly watching over the place. Even if someone really did not know what was good for them and came in, they would have to weigh their own strength. He did not come here for a reason. He just thought that if Xiao Jiao and the others came back in the future, they would definitely come back here. Since he did not know where to find them, then he would let them come find him. During this period of time, he had asked around and heard that the Yin Hall's underground forces were here. Thinking about it, it should be Hui Lang and the others, right? Now that he was here, he figured that it would not be long before they contacted him. Chapter 3310. Who dares to occupy the Feng Manor? Just as Guan Shilin was about to go rest, he heard this and laughed. Thinking about it, this person should be someone from the Xiao family. They came quite quickly. He adjusted his expression, turned around, and walked out. Outside, he saw a middle-aged man in luxurious clothes standing in the front yard with his hands behind his back. Behind him were several guards. Looking at his aura, he should be the head of the Xiao family. This is the head of the Xiao family? Guan Shilin asked. Although he asked, he was somewhat certain. He just didn't expect the head of the Xiao family to care so much about this place. Hearing Guan Shilin's words, the head of the Xiao family's expression changed slightly. He asked in a deep voice, "Who are you? Why did you enter the Feng Manor? Do you know that the Feng Manor has a master?" Hearing this, Guan Shilin smiled. "Head of the Xiao family, please come in and sit." As if he was the host, he made an inviting gesture. Then, without waiting for the head of the Xiao family to take a step, he walked in first. Seeing this, the head of the Xiao family frowned. He stared at the person's back for a while, but in the end, he followed in. In the main hall, he saw Guan Shilin sitting in the main seat. The head of the Xiao family could not help but frown. His eyes were filled with anger. "You really think you're the master of this place?" Guan Shilin smiled and said, "Head of the Xiao family, there's no need to be angry. I haven't introduced myself yet." He looked at him and smiled. "My surname is Guan, and my name is Shilin. I'm Feng Jiao's older brother." Hearing this, the head of the Xiao family was shocked. After calming down, he snorted heavily and looked at Guan Shilin with a dark expression. "Why don't you find a better excuse to lie? What do you mean you're Feng Jiao's older brother? Feng Jiao's surname is Feng, and your surname is Guan. How can you say you're older brother?" Guan Shilin was not angry. He only smiled and said, "I am her older brother, but I'm just a foster brother. I'm not her biological brother. Just because you say so, do you think I believe you?" The head of the Shao family said in a deep voice. He looked at him coldly. Why would I lie to you? Guan Shilin shook his head and said with a smile, I only came here a while ago by climbing the celestial ascension stairs from the lower realm. Because I didn't have any news about them, I stayed in the city for a few days and asked around. Only today did I decide to come to the Feng Manor. Hearing this, the Shao family's master frowned slightly and stared at him without saying a word. I'm not asking you to believe me, but since you're here, I have to tell you that I'm staying here to wait for them to come back. Master Shao stared at him for a long time and asked, How can I believe that you're Fengjiu's elder brother? Guan Shilin smiled. What does Master Shao want to know? Someone close to my sister. There are some things that even if I told you, you wouldn't know, so there's no need to say it. However, even if my sister doesn't come back, the person close to her will come back soon. At that time, Master Shao will know that I'm telling the truth. Hearing this, Master Shao thought for a bit and said, Okay, since that's the case, I'll believe you for now. However, this place has been abandoned for 5 years. Although I've ordered people to clean it up, there aren't any servants in the manor. It's inconvenient for you to stay here. Why don't you come to the Shao Manor and stay for a few days? Hearing this, Guan Shilin smiled and said, There's no need. I'll just stay here. Chapter 33:11. Then I'll go back and pick some servants to send over. Since we're going to stay, it's inevitable that there will be some servants moving around. As he spoke, he stood up and cupped his hands. Farewell. Guan Shilin returned the salute. After sending him out, he went to the backyard and found a place to rest. After he left, an old man next to him asked, Family head, do you really believe what he said? You don't believe him? The Shao family head looked at the old man. Not really. I saw that this person's aura is not ordinary. He doesn't seem like the kind of person who wants to take advantage of others or has some ulterior motive. Perhaps he really does have some relationship with young Miss Feng. If it's really as he said, then someone will come in a few days. That's a good thing. The Shao family head nodded. That's right. This person is young, but he has the aura of someone in a high position. His every movement has an intimidating aura. He's quite similar to them. As for Fengjiu and the others, Xinyuan Mose and Fengjiu didn't need to be said. Even Leng Hua and the others by their side didn't seem like servants. Instead, they seemed like sons of aristocratic families. Thus, after seeing Guan Shilin, he believed most of it. However, what the Shao family didn't expect was that they didn't have to wait for a few days. As soon as the sky darkened, someone quietly snuck into the Feng Manor. Guan Shilin, who was resting in the courtyard, heard the commotion and opened his eyes in the darkness. He sat up and said, Come in if you're here. Just as he finished speaking, 2 black figures jumped in through the window. The lights in the room lit up, and the 3 people in the room secretly looked around. Guan Shilin originally thought that would be Leng Hua and the others, who knew that it would be 2 masked men in black. Seeing the masks on their faces, he grinned and leaned against the bed. People from Yindian, greetings, Master Guan. The 2 people looked at Guan Shilin, then respectfully cupped their hands and bowed. Who sent you? Huilang? Or is it Leng Hua? Or is it Du Fan? As he asked, he stared at their masks. He thought to himself that the masks worn by the people from Yindian were exactly the same as before. However, to be able to wear masks, they should be people with some status in Yindian. At most, the people below them. It's Manager Du sent us. One of them said, Steward Du and the others knew that Lord Guan came here, so they ordered us to secretly inquire about the news. Where are they? Are they not in Foursquare City? Asked Guan Shilin to ask. They're not in Four Corner City, but they'll be here in a few days. Hearing this, Guan Shilin turned a find. Since you know I'm here, that's enough. You could go back. Tell them that I'll be waiting for them here. If they were coming back, then Little Nine and the others should be coming back soon. Yes. The 2 responded, but didn't leave immediately. Instead, they said, Master Guan, if you have any instructions, you can go to today's restaurant and find the manager. This is a token. One of them handed over a token. Hearing that it was today's restaurant, Guanxilin raised his eyebrows and nodded. He reached out and took the token. Yes, I understand. We'll take our leave. The two people left in a flash. Chapter 33:12. In a town, Wang Xianhua, dressed in a red dress, reclined on the second floor of a restaurant. She gently swirled a wine cup in her hand as she looked at the people coming and going below with her mesmerizing and seductive gaze. She would occasionally take a sip of wine. She lazily reclined there, and a seductive aura naturally emanated from her body. Her every movement was filled with a seductive aura, causing the people in the restaurant to involuntarily stare at her. Who is that woman? She's so beautiful. A cultivator could not hide the astonishment in his eyes. His gaze was fixed on the red figure. Looking at that exquisite and graceful figure, he felt as if there were feathers gently brushing against his heart. It was difficult to resist. I've never seen her before. She should be a foreigner, a cultivator beside him said. A cultivator at the side said. He saw that the woman in the red dress didn't seem to notice the burning gazes of the crowd. She continued to drink her wine and lay by the window like a cat. He couldn't help but have the guts to be lustful. It's rare to meet such a beauty. I'll go over and invite her to drink with me. The man could not help but stand up and walk towards the woman. Miss, how can it be fun to drink alone? Why don't you accompany us? As the man spoke, he leaned forward slightly. He could faintly smell the faint fragrance of the woman's body, and he felt his heart ripple. Scram. Wang Xianhua's red lips parted slightly and spat out a cold word. However, she did not even turn her head. Instead, she brought the wine cup closer to her red lips and took a sip. She continued to lie there and look at the street outside. Being told to scram by a woman like this, the man felt a little embarrassed and his expression changed slightly. Especially when he saw the crowd looking in their direction. He mustered up his courage and stepped forward. Miss, as he spoke, he reached out to grab Wang Xianhua's hand. However, at that moment, Wang Xianhua, who was originally looking at the street outside, turned her head. Her seductive gaze swept over with a cold glint, and she released her pressure. She did not even touch that person, but that person's face paled and he abruptly took a few steps back. He groaned and spat out a mouthful of blood. In the end, he could not even stand up and fell down. His face was pale and filled with shock as he looked at the beautiful woman who was staring coldly at him. His heart was in turmoil, and he was shocked beyond words. Seeing this scene, the crowd's hearts also shook violently. They all looked at the beautiful woman in red at the same time with unconcealable shock on their faces. This woman had actually used her pressure to push that cultivator away and make him vomit blood. For a moment, the way everyone looked at her had changed. The amazement in their eyes had turned into fear, contemplation, and inquiry. Everyone looked at her quietly. She was dressed in red and had an outstanding temperament. The first person that came to mind was Fengjiu. However, the moment this thought appeared, they secretly shook their heads and rejected it. It shouldn't be Fengjiu. Although they had never seen Fengjiu before, they had heard that it was an absolutely beautiful woman with a face that could topple cities. Her beauty was cold and aloof. The woman in front of them was also extremely beautiful, but it was not the kind of beauty that was cold and aloof. She was alluring, beautiful, and extraordinary. Such a person could not be Fengjiu. However, she also liked to wear red. Then who could she be? Chapter 33:13. Suddenly, someone slapped his head and exclaimed, I know who she is. Everyone turned to look at the man with wide eyes and asked in a low voice, Who is she? Who is she? If she's not the ghost Dr. Fengjiu, then she must be Wang Xianhua. Yes, she must be Wang Xianhua. Once this was said, some people showed a look of understanding while others were puzzled. However, when they looked at the woman, they saw that she acted as if nothing had happened and continued to drink her wine. Brat, it's good that you're still alive. Do you know who Wang Xianhua is? She killed thousands of demonic cultivators by herself, and you dare to provoke her? You must be tired of living. Hearing this, those that didn't know couldn't help but gasp. She killed thousands of demonic cultivators by herself? How strong is she? When a man who was vomiting blood heard this, his face turned even paler. He didn't dare to cause trouble and hurriedly stood up with the help of the table and crawled downstairs. Seeing that the man left, the people on the second floor sat down. They didn't provoke her, so they didn't have to leave. After all, Wanyan Qianhua was from the Blue Star Immortal sect, so they didn't have to worry about her killing people. Have you heard? The news has spread, and people from all over the world are heading to the Blue Star Immortal sect. I heard that the sect leader of the Carefree sect will also bring people over. That's right. During this period of time, the sects have sent many disciples back to their families because they are worried that Sovereign Tong Tian and the others will attack them. But this is also good. At least it's safer to send them back, and they can leave some seedlings for the sections. This time I heard that the sects don't have the confidence to fight with Sovereign Tong Tian, but this battle is unavoidable. If they don't fight, they will have to submit to Sovereign Tong Tian and listen to his orders to help him dominate the world. Why do you think the sects will help him? Sovereign Tong Tian is said to be at the Divine King level. Who in the world has the strength to fight with him? Even the sect leaders of the various large sects, none of them have reached the God King level, right? Of course. Do you think that just anyone can reach the God King level? Not to mention that there aren't any in the major sects. It would be difficult to find a few in the various realms. As Wanyan Qianhua listened to those people, his hand that was swirling the wine glass paused. No one knew what he was thinking. He looked at the wine glass in his hand and did not move for a long time. She drank her wine and looked at the streets until the sky gradually darkened. Then she got up and walked out, preparing to find an inn to rest for the night and leave tomorrow. However, just as she left the restaurant and walked through the streets of the city in search of an inn, a cold, killing intent suddenly assaulted her from behind. She stopped in her tracks and turned around abruptly. She saw over a dozen sword-wielding black-clothed men appear on the streets and attack her. Run! When the commoners on the street saw this, they were so frightened that they cried out in alarm and scattered in all directions. Not long after, the entire street was empty, and only things were scattered messily on the ground. The black-clothed men did not say anything. They just made a hand gesture, and the men surrounded her. Chapter 33:14. The red figure shuttled back and forth among the black-robed men. She was extremely fast and swept past them like a ghost, causing the black-robed men's attacks to miss. A cold light flashed past, and one of the black-robed men fell to the ground with a groan. In the next moment, Wanyan Qianhua's longsword flashed and slashed out. She quickly retreated and put away her longsword. With a flick of her sleeve, something seemed to fly out from her sleeve and rush towards the black-robed men at an extremely fast speed. In an instant, the black-robed men struggled and screamed. They all pointed their long swords at each other and started killing each other. It could be seen that the black-robed men's attacks were not as fierce as before. They seemed to be trying to stop something. However, their swords were still pointed at their companions in the end. Wanyan Qianhua looked at this scene expressionlessly. When she saw the concealed, evil cultivator's aura being released at this moment, the corners of her lips curled up coldly. She watched as the dozen or so men fell one by one before she turned and left. The commoners and cultivators who were hiding far away saw this scene and couldn't help but be speechless. Some people asked in confusion, why did those evil cultivators suddenly kill each other? What do you know? That Wanyan Qianhua is a member of the Wanyan clan. Do you know what the people of the Wanyan clan are best at? A cultivator said as he rubbed his arms in fear. What are they best at? Someone asked. Controlling ghosts. The Wanyan clan is either good at controlling ghosts or raising ghosts. Their ability to control ghosts is unparalleled. Otherwise, why do you think those people would kill each other for no reason? Hearing this, the surroundings fell silent. They didn't know if it was a psychological effect, but they felt that the streets were cold. especially with the pervasive smell of blood. It seemed even more eerie 2 nights later. In a forest, Wanyan Xianhua was resting on a tree. The gloomy forest was very gloomy, but those evil beings didn't dare to come within 10 meters of her. The night was very quiet. Therefore, she could vaguely hear footsteps and voices in the distance. However, sleepiness overwhelmed her, and she didn't pay much attention to it and fell into a deep sleep. In the second half of the night, she was awakened by the clashing of swords and sabers in battle. She opened her eyes and stared at a certain spot in the forest with an ugly expression. She had been sleeping soundly, but was woken up. The anger in her heart was so strong that the aura on her body became colder. A red figure flew in the direction of the sound like a ghost. It was cold, and only a red figure could be seen in the dark. From a distance, it was a terrifying sight. When Wanyan Xianhua arrived at that place and saw the people fighting in front, his eyes flashed. It was actually people from the free and unfettered sect. Her heart trembled. She saw several free and unfettered sect disciples covered in scars being surrounded by devil cultivators. She saw one of the devil cultivators raise his hand and send a fierce palm strike towards one of the free and unfettered sect disciples. She didn't even think about it and rushed out. She pushed the disciple aside and condensed spiritual energy in one hand to meet the devil cultivator. Bang! Chapter 33:15. The demonic cultivator fell to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. After twitching a few times, he lay motionless on the ground and stopped breathing. Seeing this, not only were the disciples of the Xiaoyao sect stunned, but the demonic cultivators were also stunned. Miss Wanyan, a disciple, recognized her and was pleasantly surprised. Wanyan Xianhua did not turn around. She only ordered, "Back off." As soon as she finished speaking, she unsheathed her sword and the red figure dashed forward. Wherever the sword passed, a cold, murderous aura gushed out. When the demonic cultivators heard the two words Wanyan, they were shocked. They had no choice. Since Wanyan Xianhua had killed thousands of demonic cultivators, it could be said that their hearts would tremble when they heard this name, especially when they looked at the person in front of them, who was wearing a red dress and was incomparably beautiful. Who else could it be but the female killer, Wanyan Xianhua? "Retreat! Quickly retreat!" One of the demonic cultivators said in a trembling voice and suddenly retreated. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he felt a chill in his throat, and with a groan, he fell to the ground. When the disciples of the Xiaoyao sect saw this scene, they could not help but widen their eyes. They only saw the red figure flash past, but they could not see her moves clearly. They only knew that she was extremely fast in the midst of the demonic cultivators. In a short while, the demonic cultivators all fell to the ground. This, so powerful. The few disciples seemed to have forgotten the pain from the wounds on their bodies. One by one, they opened their eyes wide and sucked in a breath of cold air. Only when they saw Wanyan Qianhua putting away the long sword in his hand and preparing to leave did they suddenly come back to their senses. "Miss Wanyan, please wait." A disciple hurriedly called out to her. "Is there anything else?" Wanyan Qianhua frowned slightly and glanced at them. When she glanced at them, the disciples could not help but shrink back. However, they did not retreat. Instead, they said, "Miss Wanyan, are you going back to the Blue Star Immortal Sect?" Hearing this, Wanyan Qianhua frowned and looked at them. He said coldly, "If you have something to say, say it. It's like this, we also want to go to the Blue Star Immortal Sect, but we have split into several groups. The one with us is the sect leader, but the sect leader has met with an accident and is currently unconscious. This place is still very far from the Blue Star Immortal Sect, and we're worried that there will be an ambush by devil cultivators on the way. So we would like to ask Miss Wanyan to protect us and let us safely send the sect leader to the Blue Star Immortal Sect." Wanyan Xianhua didn't speak for a long time. He just frowned and stared at the disciple who spoke. No one knew what he was thinking. Because she didn't open her mouth, the disciples couldn't guess what she meant. They cautiously called out, "Miss Wanyan, Wan Yin Qianhua came back to her senses. A dark light flashed across her eyes, and she asked in an inexplicable voice, "You said that your sect leader is unconscious?" "Yes, that's right. Actually, our sect master almost went berserk when he was cultivating some time ago. Later on, he didn't recover. After he arranged things and brought us out, he was ambushed and aggravated his internal injuries. Now, he's unconscious. In order to protect our sect master, we took the risk to lure those demonic cultivators away. Luckily, Miss Wan Yin saved us." Hearing their words, Wan Yin Qianhua didn't know what to think. After a while, he said, "Where is he? Take me to see him." Chapter 33:16. In a simple cave somewhere in the forest, more than 10 disciples of the Xiao Yao sect were guarding outside. Inside the cave, there were 2 or 3 disciples, a middle-aged man, and Junju Shang, who was in a coma. I wonder if they'll be in danger. Will they be able to get rid of those demonic cultivators? The disciples guarding outside were worried, looking around from time to time. It's still a long way to the Blue Star Immortal Sect. We don't know how many more dangers we will encounter. The disciples lowered their voices, looking worried. Suddenly, there was a rustling sound. The disciples guarding outside looked over and saw a few familiar figures. It's Senior Brother Chun and the others. As soon as they heard the surprised voices, they quickly rushed forward. When they got closer, they saw the bloodstains on their bodies. Their faces changed. "Senior Brother Chun, we're fine. Don't worry. Look, who is this?" The leader of the disciples said with a smile, gesturing for them to look at Wan Yin Qianhua. When they saw them just now, they noticed a red figure beside them. At this moment, the disciples who had seen Wan Yin Qianhua before were startled. "Miss Wan Yin." "Yes, it's Miss Wan Yin. Fortunately, we met her. Otherwise, I'm afraid we would have died under the swords of those demonic cultivators." Hearing this, everyone immediately saluted Wan Yin Qianhua. "Thank you for saving us, Miss Wan Yin." Wan Yin Qianhua looked at them and said, "Lead the way." "Yes, Miss Wan Yin, this way." They quickly led her to the cave. After arriving at the cave, only one person brought Wan Yin Qianhua in. The other stayed outside and helped the disciples clean their wounds. When the middle-aged man saw Wan Yin Qianhua, he couldn't help but be shocked. Miss Wan Yin? Why are you here?" Wan Yin Qianhua looked at him and said indifferently, "I was preparing to return to the sect. On the way, I met a few disciples of your sect." As she spoke, she walked in and her eyes fell on the figure lying by the fire. After 5 years, he still looked the same. It was as if he hadn't changed at all. However, because he was unconscious, his face was a little pale and his eyebrows were slightly furrowed. It seemed that his situation wasn't good. With his cultivation, how did he end up like this? With his cultivation and comprehension, how did he end up like this? This, I don't know. The middle-aged man shook his head. Wan Yin Qianhua sat down by the fire and asked, "Have you taken any medicine?" "Yes, this morning I took an internal elixir to treat my internal injuries, but I haven't woken up yet." As the middle-aged man spoke, he looked at the cold Wan Yin Qianhua and was secretly surprised. After not seeing her for 5 years, he felt that she had changed a lot. In the past, she was full of smiles and natural charm. Now, although she was still beautiful, she inexplicably made people feel cold. Thinking about the changes in the sect leader and Wan Yin Qianhua in the past 5 years, he couldn't help but wonder what happened to them back then. Thinking of this, the middle-aged man asked carefully, "Miss Wan Yin, we haven't seen each other for 5 years. Have you been well?" Hearing this, Wan Yin Qianhua curled her lips. She glanced at the middle-aged man and said, "Better than your clan leader." Chapter 33:17. Yes. The few of them replied and turned around to leave. After the few of them left, the middle-aged man said, "Actually, I'm very happy to be able to meet Miss Wan Yin here. Originally, I was worried that the sect master would be unconscious and that the journey would not be peaceful. However, if Miss Wan Yin can accompany me, I can still be at ease." As he spoke, he paused and continued. If the sect master knows that Miss Wan Yin has come, I think he will be very happy. However, after he spoke, he suddenly felt that the atmosphere in the cave seemed to have become colder, causing him to involuntarily shiver. When his gaze fell on Wan Yin Qianhua's face, he saw her coldly looking at him with a smile that was not a smile. That kind of gaze made him unable to say the words that were about to come out of his mouth. He could only smile embarrassedly and said, Then let's go out for a walk. Miss Wan Yin, you can rest here first. If you need anything, just call us. Without waiting for her to say anything, the middle-aged man stood up and walked out, leaving the two of them alone. The cave was quiet. Only the occasional crackling sound of the branches burning in the fire could be heard. Wan Yin Qianhua did not look at the unconscious Jun Jushang. Instead, she sat quietly in front of the fire. Looking at the fire, she recalled the words he said to her 5 years ago, as well as the cold and indifferent expression in his eyes. 5 years had already faded away the feelings from back then. She thought that the person she had not seen for 5 years had already faded from her mind. However, when she saw him today, the scenes of the past once again appeared in her mind. Her gaze turned slightly and fell on the unconscious Jun Jushang. Seeing the sweat on his forehead and his frown becoming deeper and deeper, she hesitated for a moment and reached out to check his pulse. After checking his pulse, she knew that his situation was not very good. He said that he had taken a pill, but it seemed that it did not have any effect. Staring at Jun Jushang, she took out the pill that Fengjiu gave her and stuffed one into his mouth. Outside, although the middle-aged man had gone out, he didn't go far. Instead, he sat at the entrance of the cave and glanced inside from time to time. When he saw Wan Yin Qianhua take out a pill and feed it to the sect master, he couldn't help but smile. As for Wan Yin Qianhua, he naturally did not need to worry or guard against her. He was only afraid that she would really do nothing and ignore him. However, from the looks of it, she should still have their sect leader in her heart. He just did not know what happened back then. He actually let her leave for 5 years? After she fed the pill to Jun Jushang, she was about to withdraw her hand when Jun Jushang grabbed it. She looked at her hand, and her eyes moved. She looked at the person who hadn't even opened his eyes. At the same time, she exerted some strength and tried to withdraw her hand. However, although he was unconscious, his strength was so great that he couldn't pull his hand back. Wan Yin Qianhua frowned and used more strength to pull her hand back. She sat at the side with a cold face and didn't look at him again. The night gradually darkened and the night passed quietly. Wan Yin Qianhua closed her eyes and rested, but she didn't let down her guard. Therefore, when the sun rose, she opened her eyes. It's daybreak. Help him out. Wan Yin Qianhua came to the entrance of the cave. With a wave of her sleeve, a flying boat appeared in front of her. Chapter 33:18. He's unconscious. It's best to use the flying ship. Let's go. Even if there's an ambush, it won't be too obvious. As she spoke, she jumped onto the flying ship. Not long after, the flying ship slowly ascended in the direction of the Blue Star Immortal Sect. Flying in the clouds, the disciples who had been on tenterhooks all the way finally let out a sigh of relief. At this moment, Jun Jushang, who had been unconscious for a day and a night, slowly opened his eyes. Sect Master is awake. The middle-aged man's surprised voice sounded. He looked at Jun Jushang, who had opened his eyes and secretly let out a sigh of relief. After waking up, Jun Jushang looked at the middle-aged man and asked, "Where is this?" "Sect Master, this is the cabin of the flying ship." "Oh, that's right. This is Miss Wan Yin's flying ship. Last night The middle-aged man told him about his encounter with Wan Yin Qianhua last night. After hearing the middle-aged man's words, Jun Jushang's gaze slightly moved. He closed his eyes and didn't speak. "Sect Master, last night I saw Miss Wan Yin feed you a pill. I reckon that pill took effect. That's why you woke up so quickly." As he spoke, his voice paused. He looked at Jun Jushang and said, "Sect Master, Last night, after Miss Wanyin fed you the pill, you kept grabbing her hand and didn't let go. Hearing this, Jun Shang's eyelashes trembled. He didn't speak, but slowly closed his eyes. Elder Su, did Sect Master wake up? The disciples outside heard him say that Sect Master woke up, so they came over to ask. Sect Master, rest first. I'll go out and tell Miss Wanyin and the disciples so that they won't be worried. The middle-aged man said, then stood up and walked out. Outside, Wanyin Xianhua heard that Jun Shang had woken up. His hand holding the wine cup couldn't help but tighten a bit. Sect Master woke up. His spirit isn't very good. Don't disturb him. Everyone disperse. The middle-aged man said to the disciples outside, hinting them to go to the front. At the same time, he walked to the front of the ship and came to Wanyin Xianhua. Miss Wanyin, sect leader is awake. Do you want to go in and take a look? The middle-aged man asked. His gaze fell on her face, and when he saw her cold gaze, he could not help but smile sheepishly. Pretend I didn't say anything. Pretend I didn't say anything. He chuckled and retreated. Jun Shang was lying on the bed in the cabin. He opened his eyes. It wasn't clear what he was thinking about. He closed his eyes after a while and fell asleep. After flying for 2 days, seeing that they were getting closer and closer to the Blue Star Immortal Sect, Wanyin Xianhua said to the middle-aged man, now that your sect master has woken up and is recovering, we are not far from the Blue Star Immortal Sect. Let's split up ahead. Hearing this, the middle-aged man was stunned. Isn't Miss Wanyin also going back to the Blue Star Immortal Sect? How? I still have some things to do. I'm not in a hurry to go back. Wanyin Xianhua said. He turned around and did not say anything else. Instead, he controlled the ship to fly down. Seeing this, the middle-aged man hurried to the cabin of the ship. Sectmaster, Miss Wanyin said that she wants to split up with us. She won't be going to the Immortal Sect with us. Okay, Jun Shang replied. He, who was leaning against the head of the bed, paused for a moment before standing up and putting on his clothes. Chapter 33:19. Jun Shang didn't say anything. He put on his robe and walked out of the cabin. His face was still a little pale, but it was much better than a few days ago. At this time, he walked out, and every step he took was very slow. The disciples cupped their fists and bowed when they saw him. Then, they retreated to the side. Jun Shang came to the front of the ship. He looked at Wanyin Xianhua, who was leaning on the front of the ship and looking at the sky outside. His eyes flashed. Thank you. These 2 words came out of his mouth. He didn't say anything else and didn't ask anything. It was just a simple thank you. Wanyin Xianhua didn't move at all. Wanyin Xianhua didn't even look in his direction. Jun Shang raised his head and looked ahead. He said, since we're not on the same path, we can stop and split up. Wanyin Xianhua didn't say anything. However, the ship slowly descended. After about half an hour, the ship landed. Wanyin Xianhua, who was leaning lazily, didn't look back. She said to them, let's go. These 3 words were cold and emotionless. She didn't even look back at Jun Shang. Jun Shang looked at her, then turned around and walked out of the ship. Miss Wanyin, take care. We'll see you at the sect. The disciples cupped their fists and said. They then walked out of the ship and stood behind Jun Shang. The middle-aged man walked over and chuckled. Miss Wanyin, we'll meet again at the sect. Thank you for taking care of me along the way. As he spoke, he cupped his hands and bowed before getting off the flying ship. After they got out of the ship, it flew into the sky again and gradually went away. The middle-aged man looked at Jun Shang and asked carefully, Sect leader, what happened between you and Miss Wanyin? Why didn't she look at you? Jun Shang didn't say anything. He just put his hands behind his back and rode his sword forward. Seeing this, the others quickly followed. On the spaceship, Wanyin Xianhua took out some wine from her space. She leaned back and drank 1 cup after another. When the spaceship arrived outside Four Corner City, she came down from the spaceship. She put away the spaceship and walked towards the city with swaying steps. After entering the city, she randomly pulled someone and asked, how do I get to the Feng residence? Feng residence? The one who was stopped was a male cultivator. He had originally thought that this red-clothed woman's beauty was unparalleled, and he was looking at her with amazement. When he heard her mention the words Feng Manor, the amazement in his eyes immediately disappeared, and he looked at her with a bit of vigilance. "Who are you? Why do you want to go to the Feng residence?" Wanyan Qianhua frowned, especially after drinking wine. He was a little unhappy. Hearing his words, he immediately grabbed his collar and lifted him up. He shouted coldly, "Didn't you hear me? How do I get to the Feng residence?" A powerful pressure came over, causing the male cultivator's face to turn pale. Not to mention speaking, he couldn't even move. Wanyan Qianhua, who had recovered, rubbed her brow. She withdrew the pressure and put the person down, saying, "I am Wanyan Qianhua. I want to go to the Feng residence. Lead the way." As soon as they heard that it was Wanyan Qianhua, the people who were paying attention to this side began to whisper. "So she is Wanyan Qianhua. I never thought that she would be this beautiful. I heard that she and Fengjiu are sworn sisters." Chapter 33:20. When Junju Shang and the others entered the city, they saw the red silhouette from afar. They saw a tall man wearing black clothes walking towards her. They didn't know what he was talking to her about. After that, the man in black clothes let go of the cultivator she was holding and helped her walk away. When Junju Shang saw the two of them leave, his eyes twitched and he lowered his head. Who is that person? Why is he helping young Miss Wanyan leave?" A disciple said as he looked at Wanyan Qianhua leaning on the black-robed man. "It seems that the relationship between the two is not ordinary. Perhaps he is young Miss Wanyan's sweetheart?" Another disciple said. As he spoke, his foot was stepped on, and he couldn't help but cry out. He glared at the disciple next to him. "Why did you step on me?" Seeing the sect master walk forward, the middle-aged man turned around and glared at them. The disciple, who had stepped on him, unhappily said, "What did you say wrong? Why did you have to say that? Could it be that you didn't know that young Miss Wanyan lived in the sect master's bamboo forest for a period of time 5 years ago? Her relationship with the sect master is not shallow. Now that you're talking about the relationship between young Miss Wanyan and that man in front of the sect master, how do you want the sect master to feel?" Hearing this, the disciple was stunned. He scratched his head and said, "I didn't know. When she went, I wasn't at the sect. After that, I didn't hear anyone mention it. How could I know there was such a thing?" He only knew that young Miss Wanyan seemed to have some relationship with her sect. How could he have known that the relationship was like this? "Enough, let's go." As they spoke, they quickly followed Junju Shang and the others. On the other side, Guanxilin helped Wanyan Qianhua back to the Feng Manor. Upon entering the manor, he called for 2 servant girls. Help her to the inner courtyard to rest. As he spoke, he looked at Wanyan Qianhua. "You go rest first. I'll have someone make some hangover soup for you." Wanyan Qianhua complied and walked to the courtyard with the help of the 2 servant girls. Actually, she wasn't that drunk. It was just that she wasn't in a good mood. Coupled with the fact that she was drunk, her temples hurt a little, and she didn't have much energy left. The servants in the mansion were sent by the Shao family. Guanxilin lived here, so it was more convenient for some servants to move around. Therefore, he sent someone to the kitchen to make some hangover soup for Wanyan Qianhua. Not long after Wanyan Qianhua entered the Feng Manor, Du Fan and the others arrived at the manor's entrance. Seeing the familiar place, they looked at each other and smiled. "Speaking of which, we haven't been back for 5 years." Du Fan looked inside and couldn't help but sigh. These 5 years had passed so quickly. Yes, it's been 5 years, and we're back. Old May's eyes narrowed as he smiled. When he thought of Fengjiu's return and the young master's return, he was filled with excitement. He wondered how the young master was doing now that 5 years had passed. Qin Xin saw that there were people walking around the manor and said, "Let's go in. Before the young master returns, everything in the manor needs to be prepared." That's true. As they spoke, they walked inside. When the servant girls inside saw them, they couldn't help but be startled. Just as they were about to ask, they saw Guan Shilin walk out. Seeing them, he laughed and greeted them. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.